OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Very good morning to you this Thursday morning. It is the longest week in the history of mankind, but we're nearly there. There's only 2 more long, interminable days to go. Oh, and good morning to you. How are you?
Very well. What's been the thing that's kicked this into such long lengths for you?
I mean, I don't know, but I remember waking up on Tuesday morning going, yeah, it's the weekend. Oh, no. What? It's only Tuesday. And I wouldn't say it's got any better since, Eoin. I would not. Maybe it's the homeschooling. I'm not sure. Maybe it's everything else that's going on. You know, the world is on fire, basically, and we're this little oasis of calm and distraction for people in their lives. But it has been the longest week of all bloody time. I don't know how you're feeling down in Kerry, and I realise that there's a microclimate down there, and a microclimate of time, however that might exist. Time moves a bit differently, happier, more contented with your lot in life.
I would actually say yes. That I would say that the last lockdown too is definitely harder than this one so far. Maybe it was just getting used to literally a different location. This one's been okay. Like I definitely find that a very important thing for how my mind works is that if things are getting more and more hopeful by the day, that's a good thing, and that is represented by the light that's outside. It's getting brighter and brighter every evening. It seems like such a stupid, basic thing to be saying.
No, it's a very pagan, old school Irish rootedness, wild way of living. I accept your treaty. Let's move on, because 0879 180 180 is everybody's number if they want to get in touch and share how you're feeling this morning. We can be the receptacle for however it is that you're dealing with the world being on fire. One of the other things that's happened recently has been the anointment on this show, led by you and Phil, I would say, of Manchester City as Premier League champions. It has been your leitmotif. You've said it all the time. It has come to be a statement of fact. And then last night they come up against a crappy Brighton team, and what happens? What happens? They annihilate them. They absolutely hammer them. They're like clearly the class of the operation of the division. What happened?
1-0, and it looked fairly shaky at times in the second half, where they're not hanging on by dear life, but certainly Brighton have a few opportunities, and Brighton are this interesting team where I love watching them. I think that they've got so many exciting players in different positions, but they just can't put the ball in the back of the net. And invariably, they tend to make one massive cock-up in every single game where they concede a goal. Like I know you and Enda have had big arguments over XG and the association with Brighton. I've been a Brighton believer this season, and I think that they've caused big teams a lot of problems. Manchester United and Liverpool can attest to that.
Yeah.
And Pep Guardiola will say it's a good 3 points for them last night to beat them. But the idea that Manchester City were going to run away with this title was based on the way they swept Chelsea aside. And we thought that, right, this is going to be like a boulder moving downhill. A boulder moving downhill should be able to crush a team like Brighton and Hove Albion. Regardless of how much I love them, they should be crushed by the Manchester City team that we thought were now entering this title race. That is not what happened last night, so you have to have a little bit of concern about where they're at. It seems that not that they've regressed, but we've seen more evidence that they're not going to score as many goals as they should in pretty much every single game. Their finishing just is not as good as it should be. Kevin De Bruyne is probably one of the biggest culprits of that. Yes, they were unlucky. Bernardo Silva whacked the crossbar with a brilliant effort. And I guess in Phil Foden, they have somebody who can finish and who has been brilliant for the last few weeks, and his goal was sublime. But there are still enough issues that I would be able to pluck out from the team, especially in that final third, and especially how they're going to convert their chances to suggest they're not now going to run away with the title. I still make them favourites, but I would definitely have concerns about this idea that they're going to run away with it.
Two quick things. If you're going to be part of, certainly their fans, if you're going to be part of the coterie of people who bitch and whine and moan about the amount of penalties that Manchester United get, find someone on your team who can score them. It's not that hard. It's a little bit of practice.
Oh my God.
You just anoint somebody, and that's your penalty taker, and they never miss. And that's the rule. Just do that. But they can't do that, which would have made the game and the scoreline look, they would say more akin to the actual ebb and flow of the match. But I'm not so sure about that. And then the other thing is, did they get any credit for winning scratchy games 1-0? I mean, the hallmark of a title-winning side, not playing well, eyes on bigger prizes, a little bit distracted, and you still win games. Is there an element of that, at least, that you're actually willing to go, okay, not great form, great form against Chelsea, I see these are the top and bottom, and the result is the same?
In the season of the pandemic, definitely. The penalty thing is bizarre, really. I think Pep Guardiola said afterwards that Kevin De Bruyne was too tired to take it.
What?
I know he's missed one. Exactly. I know he's missed one penalty this season, but that doesn't stop Kevin De Bruyne taking your penalty in injury time when you're 1-0 up to put the game to bed. And Brighton did have a free kick after that. And I'm telling you, had they equalised from that, Raheem Sterling, he would have got absolutely bollocked by Pep Guardiola afterwards. But to allow him to take that penalty in that situation was just ridiculous. You let Kevin De Bruyne put the ball in the back of the net. He is your penalty taker, and he was on the pitch. Like, they definitely do deserve credit for winning a game like that last night, especially when you see what happened later in the evening and how Spurs stumbled to a 1-1 draw against Fulham. There are going to be more strange results. I do think City are going to find themselves in a result kind of like Spurs found themselves in last night, where they do concede a stupid goal or they concede from a set piece or something, and they just haven't been able to do enough at the other side, and they stumble to a couple of 1-1 draws between now and the end of the season. The thing is that United and Liverpool are also going to do that, and Liverpool might actually end up getting beaten in a lot of those games that City will be drawing, and I think that's the difference. I think that City's defence isn't going to let in more than one goal in a single game at this point, certainly against teams outside the top four at this point. So, like, I think that they're going to be safe enough at the back, and they look so good defensively, and that'll carry them through.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see what happens when they concede one of the goals that could have been scored last night. If that is a sudden kick in the nuts for their confidence, or if actually they're going to be able to deal with that, because there's still a fragility there. This isn't the same swashbuckling team that had the league title won and in the bag very early on in the season. So let's just wait and see. I'm not anointing them champions just yet, and I'm not saying that Liverpool won't win the league just yet. And I'm also not saying that I don't think Man United could pull a Leicester this season and keep going. I think there's a possibility that outside of that, it's hard to see, particularly because of what Spurs did last night. They drew 1-1 with Fulham. If you're just waking up, Fulham equalised very late. Sorry, they didn't. They equalised in the second half. And it looked like one of those stereotypical Mourinho has an idea, it's in his head, it's all working out, and then it goes awry and there's no real ability to change it up or to change tack at all. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But City are title pretenders is what we're saying here, and they're not actually. You're taking the chain off them. You're taking back those medals. And you're saying, oh, hang on a second.
So basically, you can come in, but you can stay at the front of the queue. That's where they're at when it comes to the market that they go to purchase their Premier League medals. That was a terrible analogy. But
no, it's like I'm assuming it's a nightclub, and this has happened to you and Kerry at some point. You know, as you post World Cup, as your celebrity was at its absolute peak. We were a YouTuber in Japan, and they were like, yeah. Oh, just wait there for a minute, and an hour later you're still waiting there as your schoolmates are getting past you. It's like, oh look, he looks good to have at the front of the queue, you know, and that's
local knowledge is all that matters.
A useful service you're providing to that group of people. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. It's 7:38. A big trade in the NBA in the last 24 hours. Maybe just explain what's going on in the NBA for us at the moment, and particularly around this trade.
So James Harden wanted to leave the Houston Rockets. James Harden, one of the best players in the NBA, not a happy man, feels like he won't win a championship ring in Houston. He's probably right. He's let himself go, though. He's basically tried to get himself traded. He's deliberately broken lockdown rules to try and get fines. He's put on a lot of weight. He doesn't look in good shape whatsoever. And it was only a matter of time before he ended up getting traded. The trade season of the NBA is obviously because of the pandemic, it overlaps even more widely than it usually does with the season this year. There are another 2 months of this. And this, I would be surprised if it gets surpassed, but there's still probably more madness to come. It's actually better than the regular season of the sport itself, when it comes to trades. And last night proved that. It was absolutely extraordinary. And there are 4 different parts to this. This is going to be like Kevin Kilbane trying to explain the Nations League, trying to explain this James Harden trade. But I've broken it down into the 4 teams involved. If you're just waking up this morning, here's what's after happening. The Brooklyn Nets is where James Harden has gone. So the Brooklyn Nets are absolutely unbelievable right now. They've moved into second favourites to win the NBA championship. I would make them favourites, assuming everybody stays healthy and everybody gets on. Now, that's a big if. They might not all get on. They've got Kyrie Irving, they've got James Harden, they've got Kevin Durant. It is the best big 3 in basketball, and it has the potential to be the best big 3 ever in basketball if they all get on. Now, the Houston Rockets, in return, have got Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodions Kurucs, 4 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps. No, I'm not going to tell you what year those picks are going for, because otherwise we're going to be here until 8:40. The Cleveland Cavaliers are also involved in this. They've got Jared Allen, a decent young player, a centre, and Taurean Prince. They don't have a point guard really who's ready to rock for the Cavaliers just yet, but Jared Allen is good. He's one for the future, and the Cavs have done okay out of this.
Well,
finally,
who did they trade with?
So to finish this off, then the Pacers have got Chris LeVert, who's and a second-round pick. So Chris LeVert has gone from Brooklyn to Pacers, and then the Pacers have subsequently traded Victor Oladipo to the Houston Rockets, and then involved in this is Jared Allen and Taurean Prince to the Cavaliers. And this is like the fourth element of all of this, to try and make up the different elements of trade picks that were required to ensure that Harden got to the Nets. That's the end point here. There was an external company, Wasserman, actually brought in by James Harden to ensure that this got over the line. And they're picking up the phone to 4 different GMs trying to make this thing happen. And everybody, bar the Rockets, I think, they probably come out the worst out of this. Everybody, bar the Rockets, probably gets what they want. But unfortunately, when your superstar player is wanting to leave and is deliberately wanting to leave, then that's exactly how this thing turns out.
What did the Rockets get?
So the Rockets, they've got Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodions Caruks, and basically 8 picks in general.
Wow.
So they got 4 first-round picks and then 4 pick swaps.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's too much, sort of thing, if that makes any sense.
They gave up Harden, and all they gave up was Harden.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And did they give up a pick as well? I don't even know at this point, to be honest, where that pick that the Nets got, where that came from. I think that second-round pick might have come from Houston, but Houston and Oladipo get a really good player who has proven himself time and time again, but is also coming back from injury. There was some concern that Indiana wouldn't get the best out of him for the remainder, and he's going to be tied up in a lot of money. That's the issue here with these players. There's extra tax being placed on contracts, and you need to be 100% sure to hand out a $100 million contract, basically. And I'm not sure Victor Oladipo is certainly worth that. So the Pacers were willing to get rid of him, get Karis LeVert from the Brooklyn Nets, and send Victor Oladipo off to the Rockets as part of this deal.
So
and then
a 4-team trade has resulted in one of the greatest basketball teams of all time on paper being assembled in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the potential to do this. I would have concerns about James Harden and Kyrie Irving both sharing ball carrying duties. All 3 of them, to a certain extent, sharing shooting duties. Maybe Durant won't shoot the ball as much because the 2 guys are pretty good, and Harden's obviously absolutely unbelievable. Like, to put this into context, Harden and Durant have won 7 of the last 11 NBA scoring titles combined. So they've got the 2 greatest scorers currently in the NBA going. Rejoining forces, because let's not forget Harden and Durant played together before with Oklahoma City Thunder, and Russell Westbrook was their third part. And sometimes a picture of the 3 of them goes viral, and it's like, imagine if they knew how good these guys would be, you could rejoin forces and make a team that could never be beaten in basketball. They kind of have, but instead of Russell Westbrook, you've now got Kyrie Irving and 3 guys who are potentially at their peak. Like, there's a case to be made that Durant is the best player in basketball right now, and he's got arguably 2 other top 5 players with him. The issue with that, of course, is that who are the other pieces going to be? You are going to see probably 3 more signings being made by Brooklyn over the next couple of months. As I said, there's another 2 months of this. They got to get them on the cheap, because they've spent a lot of money on their big 3. And if one of them gets injured, well, then they've screwed this whole thing up. But that's the risk you have to take. If you want to take down the Lakers, going for a big 3 is probably the way to go, because realistically, they only have a big 2.
All right, that is the big breaking story from basketball overnight. And I think we've done as good a job as Kev did about the Nations Cup and explaining exactly what happened. But fair play to you, it's very early in the morning. 7:44 exactly. Phil Egan, good morning to you. How are you? What's going on, Phil?
Well, obviously, a lot of the talk in the last few days about Manchester United and Liverpool, but Manchester City just sneaking up there on the inside, and 7 wins in a row now in all competitions. Pep Guardiola's side up to 3rd place. They beat Brighton 1-0. Phil Foden scored the goal just before half-time. Could have been a 2-0 win. Raheem Sterling, even though Kevin De Bruyne was on the pitch, Sterling missed an injury time penalty for Pep Guardiola's side, blasted it over the bar. So City now just a point behind Liverpool, 4 points behind Manchester United. But more importantly, they have a game in hand over United and Liverpool. And Guardiola said after the game, he talked in glowing terms of Phil Foden and his ability to score goals, but he also was asked about the hugging protocols, and there's been a talk about trying to clamp down on players celebrating after goals. But Guardiola said it's just too tough not to hug after scoring a goal. It's just something that players do. And there's a story on the back of one of the papers today, basically saying that it's an insult to the health workers in the UK. So I don't know if this is coming from a government official where he's having to go Premier League footballers for hugging, whereas sure, it might look great given the sacrifices everyone has to make, that you can't hug loved ones anymore, but I think Premier League footballers hugging each other is way down the list of concerns that the NHS or the UK government have. But I think you're going to see it continue. And obviously Tottenham were in action last night as well. They missed their chance to move into the top four. Jose Mourinho's side held to a 1-1 draw at home to Fulham, but the frustration for Spurs fans. Harry Kane scores a great goal, brilliant from Reguilon to not only control the ball, but put in an unbelievable cross for Kane. So 1-0 up, and they do what they tried to do a few times this season, see out the game, but they didn't do it. They just invited Fulham on, and eventually Fulham got the equaliser. Ivan Cavallero, not too dissimilar, his goal from the Harry Kane goal, crossed in from the left from Ademola Lookman, who was very impressive when he came off. And another 2 points dropped for Jose Mourinho. So you think back to the Wolves game, the Crystal Palace game, maybe the Newcastle game to a lesser extent, where it was a fairly controversial penalty awarded in that game. But yeah, you can't help but think, if you're a Spurs fan, of all those dropped points. Arsenal are back in action tonight. They look to make it 4 league wins in a row. They host Crystal Palace from 8 o'clock. If Arsenal were to win that game, as bad as they've lost 8 league games this season, they'd actually move level on points with Chelsea. And think of all the money that Chelsea have spent. Now, obviously, Chelsea would have played a game less. In snooker, Mark Allen was beaten 6-5 by John Higgins last night in the first round of the Masters. Quarterfinals get underway today in Milton Keynes. You've got David Gilbert against Kyron Wilson first, and then you've got Stuart Bingham and Sean Murphy, a battle of former world champions. And finally, for me, in golf, Seamus Power, among the early starters today at the Sony Open in Hawaii. Remember, it was a last-minute call-up to this event. He's going to tee off at 5:30, and we'll play alongside Bill Haas and Taylor Gooch. All
right, we'll keep a close eye on that over the course of the weekend. Hopefully he makes the weekend as well. Good stuff, Phil. Thanks very much for that. We'll keep an eye out for Phil's stuff all day on OTBSports.com and, of course, on the OTB Sports app. A reminder, OTB AM live every morning in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up on the show between now and 10 o'clock. I'm going to speak with Martin Lipton in just a moment about the situation at Spurs. We might get a question about Arsenal towards the end of that as well. Malcolm O'Kelly is going to join us at 8:15 to talk us through the depth chart for the second rows for Ireland for the Six Nations, which we hope does go ahead. At 8:35, John Duggan's going to join us. We'll talk to him a bit about his column, which is up now on OTBSports.com as well. Steve Scott played in the US Amateur against Tiger Woods and has been an interested spectator watching the new HBO documentary as well. He's going to join us 9:05. Cian Fahey going to tell you what to watch out for in this week's NFL. Sue Murphy at 9:20 starting our new TV slot. And Ronan O'Gara at 9:30 talking about the COVID outbreak in La Rochelle. Now, delighted to say Martin Lipton is with us to talk about Spurs and the situation they find themselves in at the moment. Martin, what did you make of the Spurs performance last night?
Well, I've had more fun pulling teeth, to be honest. It was fairly hard work. They got exactly what they deserved. They were just off it from all game. I thought slightly sloppy from the start. Got a very good goal. Could have scored a few more, but once again settled into that have what we hold, or hold what we have approach, which has been their undoing on too many occasions actually in the last 6 weeks, and it's cost them again. They've thrown away in the last month 6 points, which would have made a massive difference to the table.
Is this a psychological thing, a philosophical thing? Because they appear to be a good enough side to go out and beat teams well if that's what they do. But by sitting back and inviting lesser teams on, they give them an even break.
Yeah, I don't quite understand why. I could understand it initially in certain occasions, but doing it again and again, what's that thing about, the first sign of madness is to continually repeat the same thing and I hope for a different outcome. Well, it is insanity to keep doing it. They don't seem to have learned. I don't quite get what the game plan is. It has to be a managerial game plan. There's no doubt about that. And the changes yesterday were odd as well. You've got Bale and Dele on the bench. You're trying to win the game, and yet you're making fairly lame, dull, safe substitutions, which is a bit a bit bizarre. But the whole performance was weak, wasn't it? Let's be honest about it.
Did the mind games from Mourinho in the build-up, where he was talking about if Fulham pick their strongest team, they'll have to apologise to the entire Premier League, did that embolden Fulham unnecessarily from Mourinho's point of view? In retrospect, maybe if he'd just stayed
I just think that Fulham played better than they expected. I don't think mind games actually have any effect on anyone anymore. It's a bit of fun for us in the media because it feels column inches, but in truth, it's a load of old tosh. And unless you're telling your players they're tired, that can seep into adversity into your own players. I'm unconvinced it has any effect whatsoever on a modern player. For one thing, they don't really consume much media. They're far more interested in Xbox or PlayStation or whatever it is they do. They're not spending their days reading newspapers and watching television the same way that the previous generations of players did. I think if they notice it at all, it's water for ducks back.
Jose, he seems to believe in it though, doesn't he?
Yeah, because it's always worked for him in the past, but doesn't mean it. And I think he thinks it works with the rival manager. That's the game he's playing. And he always talks about, from the start of his career, the game before the game. He thinks it might work. I personally am less sure that it does, but he's not going to stop something that's always worked for him throughout a 25-year managerial career.
Do you think we get to a point this season where Gareth Bale and Dele Alli start to get meaningful minutes yet again for Spurs in the league?
I don't know, actually. If I had to put 50 cents of your money on it, I'd probably say no. I hope that they do play. I think that Bale was initially a fitness problem. He wasn't fit enough. You could tell that when he played, he wasn't fit enough. And he came to Spurs to get minutes and get fit, but he's obviously not quite doing that. And Dele, I thought initially it was like the Joe Cole situation at Chelsea, where he'd make an example of someone to make them better and make them want to prove him wrong. I now think he just wants to make an example of someone. I know it was only Marine on Sunday, but there was no questioning at all of Dele's attitude, and I thought that would be a sign that he might be valuable. Saying that, they're playing so many games so quickly. Sheffield United on Sunday, then the game that follows that, and the game that follows that, and the game that follows that. So many matches to play, but they may play a bit more. And I think they need to for their own well-being, also for the ability to change the team and shape the way a game goes. I thought they could have just done with either or both of them on the pitch just to make a difference yesterday for the last half hour.
They're 6 points behind Manchester United at the moment. It definitely feels that the title race isn't gone from Spurs at the moment, but it does feel that they need something extra to be able to continue to close that gap over the next little while. And those players are the sort of players that could come off the bench or start a few games when players are tired. They're the sort of players that a lot of those teams at the top of the league just don't have. The depth that Spurs have, it almost feels like this untapped resource, Martin, in this title race.
Yeah, I agree. I think I understand when you start the team you start, but when the game's not going as you suspect, then you've got to be willing to go and be a bit bolder. And I think that's what we're looking for, really, a bit more boldness from the manager. He can change like that. At the start of the season, they were scoring goals all over the place, and they're playing with the freedom and vibrancy that was really quite exciting. Now they're not. They're still scoring goals. It's still, if you look at the goals scored, there's not many who've scored more, and they don't concede too many. I think that's, they've only conceded 3 or 4 from open play all season. But at the moment, you feel they're going to concede a goal a game. That means they've got to score 2. What's the best way of scoring 2? Having better attacking players on the pitch. And then, it is only halfway point of the season, not even that, and they are in the mix. But then again, so are so many teams. You would think that the strength of quality in the side means that the second half, when the games keep coming, that will show, and that they'll be more able to stay longer. I think realistically they're looking to try and get into the top 4 rather than win it. In this mad season, anything's possible. And if a team puts a run of 6 or 7 wins together, it can change it markedly. But they don't look to me to be as strong as City or Liverpool or I won't say all United. I think they're as strong as United. Just United are getting better results. I'm still not convinced by United, but you can't argue with the results they're getting. But I think it's still hard to see beyond Liverpool and City as the 2 that you have to beat to win the league, and I think that they'll be 1 and 2. the order is less clear. I think City at the moment will be favourites.
What is the story with Gareth Bale? Why is he not getting game time?
Well, it was originally pure fitness. He wasn't fit enough. Then there's been no signs of a fallout. No negativity from Bale on the bench. He's not sitting there watching his iPad to try and find some golf on the golf channel, is he? You know, as he was at Madrid. He hasn't kicked off. He hasn't played much golf because no one's played much golf, as we know. Maybe he just doesn't quite fit in the way Mourinho was hoping. But Mourinho's always wanted to have him in his team, you know, in his squad. He's spoken of that in the past. One of his regrets was that he'd left Madrid before Bale turned up. So I can't see there's any animus between them. At the moment, he just doesn't feel he's right. I'd like him to be wrong. I want to see Bale play. Is there
any fitness level, like even a match fitness and a sharpness? And it's a complete catch-22 because unless you put him in the team, he's not going to get it.
Well, yeah, and I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, I thought he'd have started him. I think they were worried about the pitch at Marine. That's why they didn't. But they've got this game at Wickham coming up next Saturday. He's got to start that surely in the FA Cup, as has Delhi. And you've got all these European games coming up as well. You know, from next month they're playing the last 32 of the Europa League. Maybe he feels that it's the cups that he's going to win this season, and that Bale and Delhi can have a role in those. I don't know. I hope so. Bale's too talented a player to be kicking his heels on the bench, and I thought that was when he was at Madrid. I can't change my mind now he's at Tottenham, can I? I mean, I think he needs to be playing football. I think for his own peace of mind, he needs to be playing. I think there's something in him still. I think he's still a terrific talent, and I think that if he got a bit of game time and got himself into the continuity of football, he would prove that all over again.
Yeah, it feels like he's the type of player who you need to invest 3 or 4 matches in, even if he's not playing well, give him the minutes, safe in the knowledge that his track record is so good that it will come good. And if you're not
you can't tell me that Gareth Bale's not a fantastic football player still, even at his early 30s. There's real quality there. And he's played a few games and scored a few goals, but I think he'd have expected a bit more. And he'll be knocking on the door saying, "Come on, Gaffer, give me a go, give me a blast, let me run, let me do what I can do."
Where are Spurs now versus where we thought they would be when Mourinho arrived? Is he on track?
I think so, actually. I don't think it was ever viable for them to challenge for the title, given the quality of Liverpool and City. I've only lost 3 games in 17. They're in one final. They're in Europe still. They're in the FA Cup still. And there's a bit more about them now. There's more defensive certainty. I think he's improved Eric Dyer no end. Hoberg coming in has made a difference. They're a decent side, let's be honest. They're good. You wouldn't choose to play Tottenham at the moment if you're anyone. So therefore, he's done, step 2 of the 5 steps to where he wants to be. And the direction of travel is positive. But it seems to be getting there a little bit slowly, and there's a little bit of a hand brake on at the moment. And maybe he just needs to take the hand brake off.
It's interesting that you mentioned that top 4 would be a good result for Spurs this season, or that's maybe what they're targeting.
I think so.
Sorry, Martin, I was actually just going to make a comparison to Arsenal in their years under Wenger when top 4 was seemingly their goal. Is that a concern at all, the way that stagnated for Wenger so quickly at Arsenal when top 4 was almost the thing they were satisfied with?
Difference being that all that period, Arsenal were the 2nd or 3rd highest wage payer, and therefore they should have been targeting higher. Spurs are still the 6th highest wage payer. Normally, there's a direct correlation between the amount you pay the players and your position. And if you outperform that, you've done very, very well. Arsenal had massive inbuilt advantages throughout that Wenger period, and they chose not to prioritise winning the title. For him, it was 4th was enough. That was a degree of paralysis and stasis that set in over 5, 6, 10 years. Spurs have never been at that level. So for them to be parking in 4th is a progression. And that we sometimes forget too easily that before Pochettino, Spurs had been the top 4 twice. in the Premier League. We've become inured to it because Pochettino was so successful. That shouldn't take away from the sheer brilliance of the Pochettino era in terms of overperforming. Spurs have closed the gap financially. The gap is still there. The new stadium will eventually, once, if and when fans return, close that gap yet further, and there'll come a point when it's no longer an excuse. At the moment, though, they're still playing with one hand time behind their back compared to the other teams in the top four.
A comment from Bobby Dwyer. Big Jose fan, but how long will it take him to learn that defence? He can't sit on a 1-0 lead. Spurs should be more attacking against smaller teams like Fulham, Burnley, Arsenal or Palace. The dig with bundling Arsenal in with Fulham, Burnley and Palace. It's Spurs fans are enjoying this, I suspect, Martin, a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, I think they'd enjoy it more if they'd held on to the leads at Palace, Wolves and Fulham, because they'd now be top of the league. There you go. That's the frustration, really, that this season the table could have looked so much better. The amount of points they've thrown away from winning positions is quite frustrating. And they could do with scoring a late goal rather than conceding one. But to be honest, you are where you deserve to be more often than not in the table. I think that they could do, as I said earlier, with being a little bit less rigid in the game plan. They could do with a bit more freedom, a bit more attacking intent. Maybe that's the plan the second half of the season. I don't know. I can't see it at the moment. I don't think he needs loosening it rather than letting it go. And they've got the attacking ability to win more games. So maybe that's what they should be doing. We will see. Defensively, they're quite resolute. I just wouldn't have Sanchez anywhere near the squad. I just don't think he's good enough. I think he's a liability. And if Alderweireld's on the pitch last night, that goal's not scored and they don't lose. And they don't draw. But he was on the pitch and that's not his fault. He did his best. He's just not quite, I don't think, good enough. I don't think he's ever trained on in 3.5 years. I don't think he's a better player than he was from the day he arrived. And that's down to two managers now, but also it's down to the player. It was a frustration. It was what they, as I said, it's what they deserved last night. I'm not going to pretend and sugarcoat it. They were quite poor.
Just one last point for me, Martin, on the financial gap that exists there that you've mentioned. There is a sort of doomsday scenario at the end of the season where Manchester United have lifted the Premier League title trophy and are back to the top of the pile, and they begin to start truly wielding their power as champions of England and their financial power as well. Would you be worried then about the future of Harry Kane at Tottenham were such a thing to happen, were United to go out and win the league this season? Would they be able to then prize a player like him away from Tottenham Hotspur, given the links that have always existed there?
No. I can expand if you want, but no. I believe you not sell to Manchester United under any circumstances. Simple as that. Just wouldn't do it.
Because he hates them? Because they're rivals?
Well, not hates them. He just doesn't. He's never forgiven them for Berbatov and Carrick, etc. As long as Spurs are going in the right direction, if they win trophies, and that includes cups, Harry Kane will not leave the club. He wants to finish his top flight career at Tottenham. If Spurs came 8th this season and were already out of the League Cup and knocked out in the 5th round of the FA Cup and got knocked out by the Austrians in the last 32, yeah, fair enough, he'd look to go, and Spurs would sell him abroad. They wouldn't sell him into a domestic team, but I don't think that's going to happen. They're already in one final. They've got a real shout of being in the top 4, maybe even, I'm not dismissing the chance they could end up sneaking it, but I don't think they will. They've still got the FA Cup. They've still got the Europa League, which is a place in the Champions League if they win that, and they're in a really good position to win that. They'll clearly be moving in the right direction. With that, if they can win a trophy, that off their back, the you don't win trophies thing, which has been a massive issue, I think, for Tottenham fans, less so for the club, because they just want to keep, going in the right direction commercially. There's no way that they would sell Harry Kane to another English club.
Martin, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Martin Lipton there. You can read his stuff in The Sun. 4 minutes past 8. If you want to get in touch, you can hit us up by WhatsApp. 0879 180 180 is the number. We have a very busy programme coming for you. Cian Fahey, going to talk NFL with him. Steve Scott talks Tiger Woods. And we're back after these with Malcolm O'Kelly running us through his second row depth chart.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Follow the leader, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. The world's best-selling plug-in hybrid is now available with 0% finance and a free home charge point worth €800. Leading the charge in plug-in hybrid technology, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. Book a test drive at your local dealer today. Mitsubishi, drive your ambition. Terms and conditions apply. See mitsubishimotors.ie. Lending criteria applies. This is a hire purchase agreement provided by Bank of Ireland Finance.
Off the ball.
I heard a few of your teammates in defence talking about Zlatan, and did anything strike you about his play being on the same pitch as him?
The fella is obviously looks after himself so well. He was doing crate kicks over the height of my head during the warm-up. So for such a big man, he was like a ghost on the pitch. You couldn't pick him up.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
The sports pages for you this morning. We'll start with otbsports.com at 6 minutes past 8. Ronan O'Gara, the secret layers behind Paul O'Connell's leadership. It's not just all shouting, and he talks about watching the Fear of God speech regularly himself. John Duggan remembering Terry Fox 40 years on. Bernard Brogan details the magic behind elite sporting performers. Solskjaer still not the man to bring trophies to Manchester United, says Damien Delaney. And David Parkhouse back at the Brandywell to add goals to the Derry attack. So it's otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app. The Daily Mail this morning, wrong move. Hegarty, GAA shouldn't jump vaccine queue. This is a conversation that we had on the show yesterday. Limerick hurling star Rod Hegarty doesn't think that GAA players should. I think he's a teacher as well. Racing Post, Advantage Arsenal, that's their back page. Henderson, we're all going stark mad, but at least racing keeps us sane. That's Nicky Henderson pointing out about the bits and pieces that we have to distract us from the fact that the world is on fire. Six Nations bosses tell French show must go on. This is Cian Tracy's story on the back of the Indo this morning. Defiant Six Nations bosses are adamant the tournament will go ahead as scheduled despite concerns raised by French authorities after organisers confirmed they've reinforced COVID-19 protocols and intend to proceed with all fixtures as planned. So that's the story at the moment, and I think it was the English Daily Mail a couple of days ago reporting that the new shareholder CVC were insisting that the window that the Six Nations happens in is now. So the London Times, Pep, too tough not to hug. The hugging is becoming a big issue in football, and whether or not it leads to some kind of censor from the government in England, which might result in matches not being played or a suspension or something, we'll have to wait and see. So their clubs were sent a graphic explaining social distancing needed to occur during goal celebrations with no handshakes or hugging. And they were doing it okay in the Bundesliga at the start when they came back. So it can be done. It's only a goal. The Irish Times, which I really should have opened up before we came on here again, is Foden's moment of class keeps City in close pursuit of top two, and it's the actual picture of the moment that Phil Foden scores his goal. Phil Foden's very good. I don't think we've made enough of that, Eoin. He's 20, and he is trending towards being the most important player at one of the biggest clubs in world football, and he's 20.
Yeah,
it's remarkable.
He's absurdly good. I know Daniel Harris is often on the show saying that he's like the best of that generation of English youngster, and it's hard to argue against that on that performance last night. There was definitely some concern about him maybe 2 months ago when Pep just wasn't starting him, even though I think after last night, is he City's top scorer in the league this season, or at least joint top scorer? Like he still managed to do that without playing a lot of games. And maybe Pep has actually just wrapped him up in cotton wool, knowing that this was going to be a long, strange season. And all of a sudden, they've got fresh Phil Foden running around in January. And that is one of the reasons why you have to be really excited about Manchester City. They don't win the game last night, obviously, without him. The finish was class. And that, I guess that final third skill that he has is outrageous, really. That finish against Chelsea as well, looked relatively easy, but I think that was also absolutely top class as well. And any team would pay a lot of money to have him. City are very, very lucky that he's theirs.
Yeah, and it completely justifies all of the investment that they made in their underage structures over the years. And if they get another couple of players through, because we heard so much about the money that they were pumping in and the quality of football that was being played and the quality of the coaching that they'd invested in, and there hadn't been much of a return since the new owners came in. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see a couple of players make it there, and it's probably going to be worthwhile. The back page of the Daily Star this morning, Peter Law has issued an apology for Celtic's trip to Dubai. We cannot dominate forever. We cannot dominate forever. It's Conor Callahan saying that the Dubs are in a cycle and eventually it's going to end. Hug of war. City turn up heat on top 2 as Pep defends goal celebrations. And FAI members want answers. So it's not just FAI members, it's FAI members of the board. Apparently are concerned about the fact that 2 members of the backroom team, I mean, really, what board getting involved in the manager's backroom team is all of the hallmarks of the troubles that the FAI have had over a long period of time. So, again, it's cited in this piece by Paul Lennon that Alan Kelly was not comfortable with the strategy, but Duff was satisfied that the initiative met accepted norms. Blah. That's the row between, I mean, backroom teams had a difference of opinion about a pre-match video. That's not actually a big deal. What continues to be a big deal is that people are leaking from the FAI to the papers. I feel good. City match winner Foden says, we are back to our best. And Kane and co are halted by Cav, and we'll do what is best for us all. This is Conor Callahan believing inter-county players will understand if GAA Chiefs have to delay the start of the season or scrap the National League altogether. The talk about scrapping the National League would be to do with finance as much as it would to do with COVID in some respects. Clubs defy government call after celebrations backlash. That was by celebrating last night. So this is becoming a big story. It's certainly the major preoccupation of the English newspapers. And
are the English government not also really adept at giving us a little bit of a sideshow and saying, look at this thing over here, and using football as that exact sideshow? It is very convenient for the UK government to all of a sudden pay a lot of attention to whether or not Phil Foden is hugging 3 teammates or no teammates. That's kind of that's kind of one thing that came to mind there. Like you're right when you say that, like at the start, it was noticeable in Germany that like Erling Haaland, when he scored that goal the first day back, it was kind of weird that he just couldn't touch any of his teammates. Like, of course they should be going back to that. Of course they shouldn't be going close contact or anything like that. But for that, is that the lead in the Daily Telegraph this morning? Like
yeah, it is. Well, sorry, and also private schools pledge to open facilities and win for Telegraph. I'll do this one for you.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised the celebrations has managed to knock that one off.
Up to 650 private schools could open up their sporting facilities for all children over the holidays to help tackle the alarming slump in activity during the pandemic. We've got our jolly hockey sticks buddies to open up the hockey pitches to the local urchins. What a win for the Telegraph.
That is a wartime mentality right there. Everybody in it together.
Yeah, spirit of the Blitz, buddy. Spirit of the Blitz. The back page of The Guardian is, you can't see that there, Haiti's Jean Bart condemned as a disgrace in FIFA report. A total of 34 alleged sexual abuse victims at National Football Centre identified. So that's a horrific story emerging from Haitian football. Full steam ahead for Tokyo Games, says Team GB chief, and then it's Phil Foden, but they don't have a picture of him hugging because they don't seem to be too concerned about that. And Kyle Sinclair is going to miss the opening Six Nations match for swearing at the referee, failing to respect the authority of the match official during Bristol's 20-7 win against Exeter. I don't know if they report exactly what he said, but he's probably going to miss that first Six Nations game, or as it stands, he will. The back page of The Sun, Fode to the title. Phil, back to our best. And out Hugo Shane. So Forest Gaffer lines up Duffy bid. This is an exclusive by Robert Thompson. And so it's that Nottingham Forest have been in touch with Brighton to try and get Shane Duffy out of the deal that he has with Celtic. I think there is an issue around this, though, wouldn't it be? You're not allowed to play for 3 clubs in the one season, so they need a derogation from FIFA. At least I read that last week, so maybe that's not true. Maybe he didn't actually play at all for Brighton. But Celtic would actually lose money on the deal because they'd obviously paid a loan deal for the entire year, and now they're not going to use him. But is it better to cut your losses, particularly when the league is completely gone, and let him go, especially since he's not going to play next season, more than likely? And the answer to that would probably be yeah. Kyle Sinclair shouted, "Are you effing serious?" to the referee. Fair play, you know. Those rugby boys are not messing around.
So what? He has been banned for this. Is that the situation here?
He's to miss the opening match as it stands. He's been ruled out of England's opening Six Nations match against Scotland after he was banned for 2 weeks for swearing at a referee.
Like, I saw the headline in The Guardian saying he's out after a foul-mouthed outburst. Like, I guess technically that is true. It was an outburst and there was a bit of foul language in there, but like that's just I don't know what the specific situation was, but that's just a reaction to a ref giving a decision that you don't agree with. Like, it's not like you've thought about saying, oh, I'm going to be disrespectful to a ref. Like, I think there's a difference. I think the 10-15 seconds where the red mist disappears and then you say something stupid to the referee, I think that is probably something we're punishing. But this is like a quick reaction, and maybe not necessarily kind of directed entirely at the referee. Maybe it's directed at the plight in which he exists, that he's kind of the victim of injustice at scrum time or something like that. So I don't know. I think this is a little bit harsh, isn't it, to rule him out for a game for one swear word?
Either you have respect for the referee or you don't, Eoin. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't have a little bit of respect, you know. It was in the aftermath of, there was a ruling for no foul play, which they must have been looking at. It must have been a TMO or something. You effing serious after a ruling of no foul play and a tackle by Luke Cowan-Dickey.
Yeah, so he probably did have time. It wasn't a reaction to an instance immediately after it had occurred. There had been a look at it, and he said to the referee after making a considered decision, "Are you effing serious?" And maybe he thought, well, he's thought about this. He's got a cool head, and he's still saying the stuff that probably warrants a bit more punishment. I think Sinclair's come out and apologised on social media and all that as well. So certainly he will learn next time.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, 087 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. And if you've got a view on the Kyle Sinclair suspension, then we'd love to hear from you. And delighted to say Malcolm O'Kelly is with us to help us get to the bottom of the Irish rugby depth chart when it comes to our second rows. Malcolm, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm good. Before we get into this, Kyle Sinclair banned for 2 weeks for asking the referee, are you effing serious? Is this a good idea or a bad idea?
I'm pretty sure it's not the first time a ref would have heard a curse word from a player, that's for sure. I don't know, maybe the fact he got on the microphone, I'm sure it must have been a case if he was doing one or two other things and that was just maybe the final nail in the coffin. But if it comes to a situation where you can't speak to the ref, I know maybe guys gotta deal with it properly. He's not the captain. Normally everything goes through the captain, but people are constantly trying to influence the ref. So it is a move, a new move to kind of ban a guy for trying to influence a ref. You know, that's new.
Yeah, and also it's like not like it's the end of the season and it's not going to have any impact. It's Six Nations game is going to miss, so I don't know. Maybe we'll wait and see exactly how many more suspensions there are for that. I think maybe you hit the nail on the head with if it's picked up, all of a sudden it becomes an issue for broadcasters and everybody else, and then they have
if you let them away with it,
they have to be seen to be acting. Let's talk about the second row depth chart. I think it's fairly obvious who our number one second row is. It's Ireland captain James Ryan, essentially, right?
Sure, yeah. Like James Ryan, we're very fortunate to have a guy like him on board, and to think that he's only 24. I've never seen such a second row so complete come onto the scene. His lines are running, his physicality, incredible. I think for him, he's kind of at a stage now where he needs to make that step to, running a line out and taking charge of that line out design, working with the likes of Leo or Paul. I think the likes of Paul will be brilliant for him. So I'd be very positive as to where he's going.
We'll talk about the influence of Paul O'Connell, and you bring up Leo as well. We might talk about both of them in a little while at the end of this. Who's second? Who is our second? Who is James Ryan's partner if everybody's fit? And as things stand at the moment, who would you be picking?
Well, as you said there, it's a partner, and that's the important thing. It doesn't have to be another James Ryan. It has to be somebody that can fulfill all the roles and responsibilities that a second row pairing require. It can be someone maybe not as athletic, maybe more physical, maybe someone who's a really good ball carrier, maybe someone who will do all the dog work. Like for instance, back in my time, Paul O'Connell and Donncha O'Callaghan were a great pairing, not because they were both brilliant at jumping or brilliant at carrying or brilliant at scrummaging, it's because a combination of the two fulfilled all the roles required. So similarly here, James Ryan does fulfill a lot of the roles, but for me at the moment, Ian Henderson is definitely our go-to guy there, because he actually will call the lineouts, and James Ryan at the moment, is still in that kind of period where he's learning how to manage a lineout, which is not easy, and it does take time, and you have to be patient with him, and he needs a certain amount of experience there. But Ian Henderson has taken that role on. Ian was originally a back row. An incredible back rower, huge, naturally powerful, gifted ball carrier, and for him it probably took him a couple of years to find out where and how to be effective in the second row. But I think he's really come to the fore now, and we're seeing good performances. He's playing in Ulster as a second row, and I would see him as the obvious selection. And pairing for James Ryan.
Okay, so we've got Tyke Byrne in 3 then. He's nipping at the heels, or is it a clear kind of distance between Henderson and Byrne?
I would say Tyke Byrne. I like Tyke Byrne as a player. I think he's a fantastic player. He is a different player to Ian Henderson. He's a grafter on the ground. He is again came from the back row, but is a different mindset to Ian. Ian is more about trying to find a line, trying to find the ball carry, where Tyke is more, he does work different lines and finds good lines to carry, looking for offloads, clever player, but is devastating on the ground. And for me, a great guy that you could have, and he'll probably hate to hear it, but a great guy to come off a bench. He can change a game with a great steal on the ground, or just a good dynamic change for the likes of Ian Henderson or even James Ryan.
Perfect to have on the bench because he can cover the back row and the second row. Absolutely,
that's my thinking on it. I think he's just for me. He's had experience in over with Swansea and out to Scarlet, should I say? So he's got he's just got that knowledge. He's worked hard. He's a grafter, and he's doing great things with Munster.
Ultan Dillane is your number 4. This is interesting because Dillane has kind of been in and out of some of the big games for Connacht, in and out of the squad for Ireland. But there are definitely moments in almost every game that he plays where all of a sudden there's a stream of people water skiing off his back, and you're like, wow, look at that.
Yeah, like that's it. Ultan is probably just one of those guys who early in his career was highlighted for the stuff that he does so well. But the problem with being a second row is that you have to do everything every week, and he has to find a certain resilience, and it's tricky when you're, and not easy when you're, especially if you're, the kind of impactful ball carrier that he's the potential to be. So the graft for him was probably something that he had to really work on, and I think he's kind of, it's taken his time for him, but I think he's coming close to it now. Whether or not he would be in the match day squad, I think he'd probably need an injury, or maybe you would play him if you needed to rest one of the other guys. That again, he might come off the bench and provide something different for be it a big ball carry. Very athletic guy, could be used well in the line out. So I think there's potential for him, and as probably would be a you could look at some of the other second rowers from Ulster or Quinn Rue again from Connacht. It might be a safer bet, but I think he offers something, a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, totally. And he's still only 27. It's like it's very early for a second row. Assuming injury, you can expect your second rows to go on to 34, 35.
Yeah, exactly. The second rows do mature slightly differently, but generally, if you look after yourself, a second row can just keep on going because, there's a wiliness to playing second row. You don't have to be the fastest or the most athletic, but your ability to read a game can be really advantageous to any team.
We've got Ryan Baird. Sorry, go on.
Well, just on that point, that's an interesting one. Do you see that level of longevity with James Ryan? Do you think he has that sort of ability to read the game, and can we expect like a Paul O'Connell length of a career from James Ryan?
Yeah, well, James is a very abrasive player, and his first year he really did take Ireland by storm. He was Ireland's best ball carrier, and he like every new second row probably took a lot of hits and went struggled with injury, concussions and the like, but he's kind of come through a lot of that, and he does seem to be very resilient now, and it's I think he'll become more and more a second row that can last the length of time. I just think he has all the skills. I think he has to learn maybe an offload game and then to manage a line out. How long he'll last, that's really good luck and fortune and interest and all of that. But I think he's 24. I got my first cap when I was 24, and he's had at least 2 seasons already. So to say that he might get 100 caps would be, it's almost shouldn't be that much of an issue for him as long as he stays away from injury. He's all the attributes. So, yeah, I'd say why not.
I'm trying to look up the stats to see exactly how many caps he has at the moment. But our next gen, we've asked everybody for a next gen. You've got Ryan Baird down, who technically qualifies because he's only 21. But there's an argument. There's an argument definitely to put Ryan Baird in the team somewhere for all these games to accelerate what's going on.
Yeah, well, you see, when I see Ryan Baird play with Leinster, I think it's only a matter of time before he's your starter, and the only thing stopping him is Devon Toner and Scott Fardy, who are 2 phenomenal, experienced second rows. They shifted him into the back row for his last performance, and that actually freed him up to carry even more. His real skill and attribute is his power and his ability to break tackles. And at 21, that's pretty incredible. You would question how long he might last, but I think he's still a long way to go in terms of his rugby brain, and he should be given a certain amount of time to fit in and to learn and to be patient. As you say, he is 21. There's another second row that I was looking at. If you wanted to look at your line-out leader, a guy that might be another James Ryan type or a Devon Toner type of player, is a guy called Jack Dunn, again from the Leinster Academy, and one of actually a number of big tall timber second rows that Leinster Academy are starting to manufacture, and we'll see in the near future. But Jack, full of brains, a theoretical physicist studying in Trinity. His stats are quite phenomenal. He's about 6'7", 6'8". He's nearly 110 kg, and he's seen some minutes now at Leinster. So there are a lot of really good young players coming through. The question is, how do they build our rugby brain to become effective at these higher levels? If they're only seeing minutes with Leinster, No AAL at the moment. You really want to see the likes of the AAL coming back and being the effective and a really competitive championship again.
Just on that, right? How does that inform your thinking if you're involved in the Ireland setup, that Baird is somebody who is going to be great and you can rush him now, or you can actually, so he'd be taken, if you put him in the team now, he's taken the place of a 6 or another second row, and competing for 6, you have Doris and Stander and maybe O'Mahony if you're not going to play O'Mahony at 7. So it's like world class and the Ireland captaincy and Alliance captain and one of your rising stars. Or you put him in instead of Ian Henderson in the second row. So you're sacrificing something right now to give Baird the opportunity and the expertise. And I don't know what the correct answer here is.
I wouldn't. I don't think quite yet. I think, as you say, in the back row, you've got some really physical, hard guys, tough players, and you've also got the likes of Rhys Ruddock, Dan Levy, some really smart, tough players who have probably earned the right ahead of Ryan Baird. I do think Ryan Baird is a phenomenal athlete, and I see a great future for him. But he is only 21, and he just needs to soak things up. And I think it would need a couple of injuries in the second row for him to get a look in.
So we should all cool the jets on getting the young players into the team earlier. That actually the right thing to do is try and win games and build a winning culture.
Yeah, I think so. But I think there's a pecking order. The likes of as we've spoken, like Tyke Byrne and Ultan Dillon and these guys all deserve a chance to prove themselves, and probably are more deserving of a crack than Ryan Baird at this stage. So yeah.
You mentioned Jack Dunn there. I know in Munster there's obviously a lot of excitement around Thomas Ahern as well. This position is looking kind of exciting for Ireland. Like, this is obviously our depth chart. It looks like a position where we have a hell of a lot of depth. Is there a way of utilising that to its best capacity? Is there maybe a bit of back row minutes to be got for a couple of these players to ensure that everybody's kind of brought up to speed pretty quickly?
Yeah, I think that is a valid point for sure. Like, I know Jack Dunn has come on occasion for Dan Levy, and Leinster are trying very hard to rotate their squads, and that is it. That especially if you're coming off the bench, I think it could be quite interchangeable. These young second rowers are so athletic that you can be quite interchangeable with if you're coming in on as a 6, and it'd be quite a freedom. Certainly, when I was coming through, I played a bit at number 8, and it's a great freedom to be able to play in the back row on occasion, and as you say, anything to get some minutes, especially right now, as there's no other games except the ones for Leinster. So for sure.
Yeah, that I just reading a bit about Jack Dunn there. Full points in his leaving cert, so it's going to be interesting to see where his career takes him on and off the field. You mentioned Paul O'Connell. We've had a comment in here about the difference that he's going to make and what his biggest. Trying to find it here. Jamie Porter wants to know. Question from Al: what, if any, is Paulie's biggest challenge as Ireland's forwards coach? It's interesting too that he's straight in as forwards coach, and so it's clearly like he's not coming in as an underling for everybody else. There's going to be a team who are working with him and to him, and it's a big gig. So, what is his biggest challenge going to be?
Yeah, I suppose he's got a number of challenges. He's got one that obviously the results. If his results don't go his way, then pressure comes on from the outside, but I don't think that'll be really what'll be bothering him. I think he'll want to obviously make an impact with the players, both as from an individual kind of perspective, where he's working with them in terms of what they need to become better players, I think he will obviously want to instill some sort of he'll want to lift, I suppose, just lift the skill level, lift the physicality, bring a character or a personality to the squad that reflects him. Certainly the pack. I think you could look at the line-out and you could say, okay, this is something that he could really get his teeth into. Now he's had a change at hooker, he's had a change at second row. So the question will be, does he rip up what's there and start afresh, or does he work with what's there? Like, I can remember when we were in a situation where we had a change of forward coach, and Niall O'Donovan stepped down for Gert Small, and we had a playbook that was 10 years old. It had hundreds upon hundreds of lineouts that most of us were very, very used to. And the easy thing would have been just to continue with that, because everybody knew them. But Gert completely changed the line. The lineout completely changed. He worked off one single lineout as opposed to what we had, about 20 different setups. He had one single lineout and was very exact. And it was no surprise that it had this kind of really galvanizing effect that ended up us winning a Grand Slam the following year. Not to completely say it was down to him, but it was probably what we kind of needed. We needed a change. We didn't think about it because we've been doing it for so long, but we needed a change. And it may be a case of, Paul being able to see that from the outside and come in and put his little stamp and being able to really change, and affect change within the squad.
Is there any concern about the fact that he hasn't actually had a seasoned coaching career at this point, that this is effectively his second major gig and the first gig didn't last very long?
Yeah, he was involved with Stade Francais. I certainly not in a position to be able to say, say whether or not it'll work out or not. I think it's very exciting. I think it'll be very exciting for any of the players to work with someone of his talent, is obviously his credentials as a player. I know him as a person, and I think he'd be fantastic. I think he got frustrated in his first gig with Stade Francais. I think it was a tough challenge, and he felt he should just walk away. And I know exactly how difficult it is coming from rugby and wanting to be involved in rugby, but it's not easy because you love the game so much. Yet the closer you are to it, the harder it is for you to you miss it more the closer you are to it almost. So I need a young family, and so now maybe the time is right for him to come back into it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any issue with his rugby knowledge. I think as a forwards coach, you're providing rugby knowledge. It's how he can communicate it, and how easy it is for him to communicate with guys, rather than he's no longer a player, so he has to communicate in a different way. And that'll be a challenge for him, no doubt. But he's such a great rugby brain that I think he'll be fantastic. All right, Mal, good stuff. Thanks a million for this today. Cheers. Great. Thanks very much for having me, guys. Malcolm O'Kelly giving us his depth chart there. Some suggestions from Instagram this morning. Ulick O'Sullivan says the order is Ryan, Byrne, Henderson, Baird. So a reversal there. Ronan Savage says James Ryan, Ryan Baird, Byrne and Henderson. So James Ryan, Ryan Baird. A lot of love for Ryan Baird. I think that's the fan coming out and saying, yeah, we want to see the shiny new thing. Give us the shiny new thing. And I totally understand that, because that's the whole joy about being a sports fan. Daniel Whitaker says James Ryan, Tadhg Byrne, Ryan Baird and Henderson fourth. Brian Short says James Ryan and Henderson. Nobody has anybody other than James Ryan first. Tariq Hassan says Ryan, Henderson, Byrne and Quinn Rue. Quinn Rue not getting a lot of love. We didn't get into the difference between the loose head and tight head second row there, which we will do at some point in the near future. Cian Kelly says Ryan, Byrne / Henderson and Baird.
Burns/Henderson would be the greatest second row in the history of the game. You'd have the groundhog and the physicality, and if we could start splicing players into one, I'm all for that.
We need to come up with a name for what the future second row is going to be. Is it going to be Ryan and Ryan? Is it going to be the two Ryans? Is it going to be R and R? Is that what we're calling it? We need to come up with a snappy name to utilise the fact that they've got the same names.
R&B?
R&B, yeah, that's probably it. That's probably it. Yeah, that's better. Surnames.
Ronan O'Gara joined Joe last night for Wednesday Night Rugby. We're going to bring you the full chat from 9:30 this morning when they chat about the COVID outbreak here in the La Rochelle camp. They also got talking about Paul O'Connell.
Yeah, brilliant news. He's obviously a very close friend, and I suppose I know I don't have a lot of time because we could chat for hours about this. We may get a chance on the big screen to do it, Joe, over the coming months. But it is a great addition, and I think, I think to give the listeners a flavour of why it would be so inaccurate to associate, the magical speeches that Paul made about that being his ace card. There are so many more layers underneath that he's a joy to talk rugby with. He has a massive understanding of the game. He has an awful lot of empathy. He isn't a hard man. He played as a hard man. He's very soft. He's very, emotionally attached to anything he gets involved in. He's obviously, I couldn't speak more highly of a guy I played essentially my whole career with. Hugely challenging. He yet absolutely loves rolling up the sleeves and getting involved in a project and getting the best outcome for his team.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make about the perception of O'Connell. Never has a, did you put the fear of God into them speech ever kind of pigeonholed a man so wrongly.
It's, but I think, because I listened to it the other day as well, because it was all over social media, but it's so good, even maybe because I was in the changing room, but it's so good and it's so poorly. But that's a snapshot of him for 60 seconds, but there's another 15 years of that multiplied by 15 games at least, and then there's all the preparation that goes into it. He is so meticulous in his preparation, but also his sense of humour is incredibly good as well.
Yeah, so Ronan O'Gara talking about his friend Paul O'Connell, who's now part of the Ireland rugby setup. Obviously, we'll bring you the full Ronan O'Gara chat around about 9:30 this morning. It's 8:42. John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you?
Kieran Owen, how are we getting on?
Well, let's start with your beloved Spurs kicking away the Premier League title.
Yeah, pretty much. When you consider they've thrown away 10 points from winning positions against Newcastle, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and who else was it? There was somebody else. Was it Wolves? Yeah, Wolves around Christmas time, and Fulham. So they've thrown away 10 points in winning positions. Only 52% possession last night. I don't have Amazon Prime, or I didn't have it on my TV, and I was watching the impeachment proceedings. And I knew what was happening even without watching it, which just shows how damning the way they play can be, because it's so great to win against Man United, against Manchester City, against Arsenal. But this is the limitation of Jose Mourinho at the moment, that they're too cautious. They sit on their leads and then they get punished. And it is TV. It's like rock star TV out the window moments. I'm not going to do that to my TV, or I'm not going to damage it by throwing it out the upstairs window. But you do feel like doing it, and it just also it gives you this complete feeling of apathy to the whole thing. It's the hope that always gets dashed. And as Mark Lawrenson always said, Spurs will always let you down in the end.
That's mad though. This is clearly a brilliant Spurs team who you should be very excited about. No.
Well, if Pochettino was managing them, they would have hammered Fulham 4-0. Phil Egan was saying that to me, and I completely agree with him. They would have hammered Fulham 4-0 last night. They have two great players in Kane and Son. Will these players be at the club next season? You've got to be able to dictate. It's fine to play in the counter-attack. It's not about playing on the counter-attack. But when you're ahead in matches, you need to be able to dictate the play against a team like Fulham, who are in the bottom three in the Premier League. You're not playing Bayern Munich.
John, I think this is the first time all season we've seen Spurs, I guess, underperform in terms of their output. Like I know you've said that this has been going on for a while, but Heung-Min Son, for example, his efficiency has been absolutely incredible this year. His shot to goals ratio has been ridiculous. Statisticians everywhere have been scratching their head at Heung-Min Son, and I kind of felt like that came back to bite him a little bit last night. I saw the great Twitter account, the XG Philosophy, had Son's XG at 1.45 and Fulham's at 0.99. So he should have beaten Fulham on his own, and he didn't get in with anything, not even a goal or an assist last night for Heung-Min Son.
Sounds like a golf stats that we're into now. Look, Kane and Son have got nothing to answer towards. It's the fact that the way they're setting up the team. And I saw the Wolves game I was watching, I said, this is going to happen. They're going to concede, and exactly the same thing happened last night, and it's happened in so many matches, and it's so frustrating when you do the hard things like beat Manchester City at home, and you beat Arsenal at home, and you beat Man United away, that you can't dispatch the lesser ranked teams. It's very frustrating. And Jose Mourinho, I deeply respect, and I'm not one of these people who gets into the bandwagon jumping of like just jumping on Jose Mourinho saying his busted foot, he's a finished product as a manager, because I do believe success in life does not always go in straight lines, always up. I think there are grey areas in life, and sometimes success can return. He's won 20 trophies, but the League Cup to me is not going to do it for me. It's not going to cut it for me if they win the League Cup, if they beat City, if they don't contend to be in the top four of the Champions League, and at the moment it's not looking likely.
All right, John, your column is about a famous runner, but not an athlete who competed in championships. It's about somebody who competed at a remarkable event.
Yeah, Terry Fox. I don't know if you guys know the story. Jaron Owen, ESPN 30 for 30 did it. There was actually a TV movie done of it, Terry Fox. And I suppose the reason why he came into my mind is two reasons, really. We're in a pandemic. There's a lot of selflessness in the country at the moment on the front line, and people looking out for the elderly, and people limiting their contacts, and young people who should be having the time of their lives on campus at the moment, limiting their contacts and being responsible. So there's a selflessness there. And also I was thinking about anniversaries. I was thinking, oh my God, it's 10 years since we had Dublin win the All-Ireland with Stephen Cluxton's kick. It's 20 years since Foot and Mouth and Jason McAteer. It's 30 years since Dublin Meath and John Daly. It's 40 years since we had Offaly winning the All-Ireland hurling title for the first ever time. 50 years since Babs Keating. 6 years since Spurs. I was just thinking about anniversaries and that kind of thing. Rory McIlroy winning the US Open 10 years ago. And Terry Fox, very sadly, passed away 40 years ago. He was a Canadian, just a normal guy from Canada. He lost his right leg. It was amputated just above the knee when he was 18 years of age because he had bone cancer. When he was 21, he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and run a marathon a day with my artificial leg from the east to the west coast of Canada. So he started off in Newfoundland in 1980, in April of 1980, lived in a van with his best friend, ran a marathon a day, didn't get much notice at all at the start, but then local, national media began to get interested, communities began to get interested. And by the end of it, he had run 3,500 miles over 143 days. But very sadly for him, the cancer returned, it spread to his lungs, and he died the following June. So he died before his 23rd birthday. But in Canada, he's seen as an icon, as a hero. They've raised 800 million in the last 4 decades for cancer research. And look, obviously, in this country as well, we've had Sheahan die in recent years. There are so many charities out there deserving of support for many people. Any kind of help they give to others can be a very deeply personal thing, and that's absolutely understandable. But I suppose it just came into my mind because of the selflessness out there in society at the moment. And just for anybody who didn't know the story, it is a really good, inspiring story of somebody who kind of fought against the odds and just the hand that he was dealt. He really just through his actions made a difference to so many people's lives.
All right, people can get that in the OTB Sports app. You can download it in either of the app stores now. John, we know all the football news from yesterday. Is there anything else going on in the world of sport today?
Well, I don't know if Shane Duffy being linked to Nottingham Forest is an interesting angle on the back pages. Nothing really else. As the women's under 20s Six Nations have been postponed until later in the year. But it is football all the way, and obviously the build-up here on OTB to Liverpool, Man United on Sunday, which will be absolutely massive, you know.
Good stuff. John, thanks very much for that. That's John Duggan.
Cheers, guys.
With us here every morning on OTB AM, and you can get him, of course, on the OTB Brief every day. Cian Fahey is going to join us to give us 4 reasons to watch the NFL this weekend in just a moment. 087 9 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us. I'm going to tell you about what's coming up on the weekend. Obviously, John's already mentioned there on Sunday, live Premier League commentary of Liverpool against Manchester United. Brian Kerr and Nathan Murphy on commentary duty. That's got a 4:30 kickoff. Before that, we've got Ruth Fahey and Stephen Doyle doing Sheffield United against Spurs. That one kicks off at 2:05, and it's Paul Rouse and Dave McIntyre doing the pay-per-view from 1 o'clock to 2. So a really busy and brilliant show looking at on Sunday. On Saturday, the Saturday panel is the amateur era of rugby in Ireland. Mick Galway, Nick Popplewell and Niall Woods. And I hope they've pre-recorded that for language reasons. Mick Galway, Nick Popplewell and Niall Woods. That'll be class. Nick Popplewell's always brilliant. 1:30 to 2:30 is our Saturday panel. And then football Saturday from 3 to 5. Dan McDonald, Johnny Ward, John Duggan and more running through the biggest stories of the football week. That's between 3 and 5. So if you want to get your football fix, make sure you're tuned to Off the Ball on News Talk on Saturday afternoon. Of course, you can get that on the OTB Sports app as well. Right, I think we've got Cian Fahey with us. Cian, good morning.
Good morning, Jar. I'm glad to share a stage with legends of Irish rugby such as Malcolm O'Kelly and Ron O'Gara. This is where I belong, I believe.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, rugby was always your true calling, right?
I have a rare claim to fame that neither of them have, where I played every single position 1 to 15 in a single season. So either I wasn't good enough to have my own position or I was good enough to play everywhere.
All right, very good. Come here, this we're trying to set the table for not just the casual fans, but for the informed fans as well about what they should be looking out for at the weekend. This weekend, there's no dross left. It's nothing but good teams, and it should be good games, right?
Presumably, but that's not always the way it works. I do think we'll get some good games this weekend. I do think there's some really good matchups. The irony of it is the matchup that's like the biggest game of the weekend and the matchup that's the late game over here, that's the one that will be difficult for people to watch, is the Breeze and Brady matchup with the Saints and the Buccaneers. So if you're kind of picking and choosing what games you're going to watch, I think that's probably the one you'd put at the last or to the bottom of the list. And you could actually focus on the other games because I think they'll be better. It's a simple matter of the Saints have blown the Buccaneers out in their first 2 matchups, and both of those quarterbacks, Breeze a lot more than Brady, are way past their prime. So I think if you're a casual viewer and you're looking at these games, you probably think Saints Buccaneers is the big one. It's probably not.
Okay, so you're making the case that the best coach in the NFL takes centre stage this weekend, but Bill Belichick's gone. I mean, he's got his own centre stage over the last week or so, but he's not. Who are you talking about?
So Bill Belichick is the best coach in the NFL probably, and the best coach in NFL history. And Bill Belichick, the only thing I don't understand about Bill Belichick is what he talks about with Donald Trump when they're having dinner together or whatever it is, because he's the smartest man you'll ever come across. But in the NFL, the only one who's smarter than him is Andy Reid off of a bye. When Andy Reid has an extra week to prepare, he is simply phenomenal. His record is incredible. The points scored every game after a bye is incredible. And this is something over his whole career. It's not just in Kansas City. It's not just with Patrick Mahomes. Even when he had Alex Smith, he was pulling teams apart and just destroying teams. So when Andy Reid's coming off a bye, he generally gets everything right in terms of his game plan. But he also has these wrinkles. So Andy Reid is famous for going away each year and coming back with a brand new play that no one's ever seen before. And this year, it's having Patrick Mahomes run sideways at the snap and catch the ball while moving in one direction, something that's just bizarre because you've never seen it before. And then sometimes he'll pivot back off of that and throw the ball in a different direction. So chances are Andy Reid's going to have something completely different for the Cleveland Browns this week, and he's probably going to need it because they've got Myles Garrett in Cleveland, and Myles Garrett is a freak pass rusher defensive end. He's 6'5", 280 pounds, whatever he is, just complete muscle, complete athlete who's going to destroy Eric Fisher in a one-on-one matchup. If that's a fair matchup where Garrett has time to get to Mahomes, the Browns will think they have a chance of actually disrupting this offense a little bit. In reality, it's probably going to be a bit of a mismatch, though, because the Browns are quite lucky last week. The snap going over Roethlisberger's head was a free touchdown at the start of the game. One of Roethlisberger's interceptions was a tipped pass. Roethlisberger in general was really, really bad in the game. You don't expect to get that from Patrick Mahomes. The only solace you have going against Andy Reid this week off of a bye is when they came off a bye last week, or this time last year, the the Chiefs got a really slow start and let the Houston Texans get out to a really big lead. So you might get that drama, but that hinges on Tyreek Hill dropping passes, Travis Kelce dropping passes, the running game not working the way you expect it to in Kansas City. I think that'll be a high-scoring game, and Kevin Stefanski, I believe, should be back at least. So that will help the Browns, whereas he wasn't there last week and they were missing half of their coaching staff because of COVID.
Didn't seem to slow them down too much. Go on, Owen, sorry.
Well, just on that point you make about Mahomes and the snap innovation from Andy Reid, is it sometimes innovation for the sake of it from Andy Reid, or is he genuinely a forward-thinking genius that no one can actually catch up with?
No, he's a genius. So one of his plays over recently. So you know that if you've watched any NFL, you'll have seen the play where the wide receiver runs across the formation and the ball's snapped and the quarterback just pops it forward, and it's a pass, but it's not really a pass because the quarterback just catches it and the ball covers about 3 inches of space in the air, and the receiver runs across the field and generally runs into space or runs to a touchdown. That's what Andy Reid brought that in a couple of years ago, and then he built off of that, where you have the same look, the same receiver coming across the field, and he doesn't give the ball to the receiver, but instead he moves to the right, and the whole play is going to the right, and then he flips the ball inside to his tight end underneath, and that becomes a screen, and the tight end runs into massive space. And he had another play a couple of years beforehand where he did all the same kind of stuff, but it happened further downfield, where the receiver would actually, or where the tight end would be running down the middle, and everything had been pulled apart to the side. Everything Andy Reid does is ridiculous. Everything Andy Reid does is completely bonkers and before it's been done, and it sounds like it shouldn't work, but it's all done with a specific purpose. He's an incredibly good coach. He's the offensive version of what Belichick is, where Belichick is a defensive genius who does things that no one expects on defense, and Reid does it on offense.
Okay, so everybody should be looking out for that, because anytime you get to watch Patrick Mahomes, you should watch him. There's only going to be 100 and whatever number of games that he plays in his career, maybe a couple of hundred, and you should watch every single one of them because he is an absolute superstar genius, like Messi level talent. Stefon Diggs versus the Ravens secondary is next on your list. Stefon Diggs, one of the players of the season.
Stefon Diggs, possibly the best receiver in the league right now this year. Like, DeAndre Hopkins got killed a little bit in Arizona because Cliff Kingsbury doesn't allow him to run deep routes or run intermediate routes. So you kind of look at Hopkins, although Beckham got injured, Diggs had an incredible year. And so the big problem here for the Ravens is they love playing man coverage. And you saw it last week against the Titans, where Anthony Firsker had that huge play and AJ Brown went off a little bit because they play man coverage, which means it's predictable. You know what you're going to get. Against most offenses, the Ravens can do that and then suffocate you with their pass rush, because most teams don't have Stefon Diggs. But if you have Stefon Diggs out there, he's going to get open within his first couple of steps. And now Diggs didn't have a great game last week. He had a couple of big plays, but he wasn't 100%. I think he's going to be healthier this week. And the thing about this is, one thing's going to win out. It's either going to be the Ravens' aggressiveness is going to win out in the pass rush, and then the coverage is going to hold up Diggs up just enough. Or Diggs is going to get to go against Marcus Peters and burn him, or he's going to get to go against Marlon Humphrey in the slot and actually get to work against him, which is an incredible matchup. It's two of the best players in the league. So the fascinating aspect of this, last week you saw kind of Josh Allen being limited a little bit by the Colts defense, where they got him to, I think they were 2 of 9 on third down. And the Colts did that by dropping everyone off, by rushing 4, only being very passive in coverage and not trying to blitz Allen too much. Darius Leonard had a great game covering a huge amount of space over the middle and then adjusting their coverage off of that. This week, it's going to be a completely different style. These are two, like the Colts defense and the Ravens defense are probably the 2 best defenses in the AFC. But the Ravens have the kind of Rex Ryan style where they want to set a bomb off in the pocket, where they want 6 and 7 guys to be coming after you in the pocket, where they want to show you one thing before the snap and do something completely different after the snap. Whereas the Colts were kind of like, line up, we're going to play coverage, rush 4, everyone sit back and force them to work the ball underneath. This is going to be big plays in one direction. It'll either be interceptions and fumble recoveries for the Ravens defense, or it'll be Josh Allen hitting Stefon Diggs wide open downfield, as well as Gabriel Davis, who's had a great game last week.
Okay, again, also really worth watching out because the quality of the quarterbacks, not to mention the stuff that you just talked about too. Brady versus Breeze, final time. What's going to happen?
Isn't it mad I went through that game and I didn't even mention Lamar Jackson? He was ridiculous last week as well. Brady and Breeze, this is a difficult one to sell. Like I said beforehand, the Saints blew the Buccaneers out a couple of times, which is a little bit illogical because on paper you would think the Buccaneers are a better team. Like these are our divisional rivals, so they were first and second in their division. The Saints have much better defense, I think, overall, even though maybe the matchups will dictate otherwise. Offensively, the problem last week for the Saints was Drew Brees is just not where he once was. You had a couple of big mistakes from him. You had that drive at the end where they were trying to force a touchdown. They didn't really need to score. And it was very much about getting the offense clicking and getting the offense moving, because it hadn't been great against the Bears to that point. You turned to Taysom Hill again. Taysom Hill had a wide open touchdown, but instead he fumbled the ball and had a turnover because he held the ball that moment too long. These kind of moments will give the Buccaneers life and give them opportunity. The Buccaneers beat Washington, and they did pretty well to beat them, because that Washington team is a difficult opponent. It's just like Brady's playing well as well. Brady's playing better than Breeze, but it's just they're still just not clicking. Like, they were missing Ronald Jones last week. He'll be a big key for them this week, because as much as Leonard Fournette was a high draft pick and is a big body and can run between the tackles, he doesn't have that same dynamic ability as Ronald Jones. So if they get Ronald Jones back, I think they'll need to try and win this as a high-scoring game. I'm not sure it's going to be able to do that. It's a game that I feel is possibly just being played to see who can lose against the Packers, to be honest.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because it brings us to our last point. It's going to be Jalen Ramsey, who the Rams spent a couple of first-round draft picks to try and acquire against Davante Adams, who's the other candidate for best receiver in football at the moment in that game. And you're telling me that it's going to end up going Green Bay's way?
Yeah, and it's actually a funny thing I mentioned that, because the Buccaneers did blow up the Packers this year, and it was the only game in which Aaron Rodgers played poorly. Like, actually, maybe in week 17 he played poorly as well, but they weren't really playing for anything then. And that's why Rodgers is going to be the MVP. He's been incredible this year. And the primary route that Rodgers has taken is going through Davante Adams, and Adams has had a great year as well. He's dropped a bunch of passes, but it hasn't really mattered that much because he's made so many big plays as well. And the value that Adams offers over the rest of the receivers in Green Bay is like quickness, that ability to get off the line in an instant, that ability to make very sharp cuts, that ability to turn in a dime and make the cornerback keep going downfield as you stop and come back to the ball. And if you have Jalen Ramsey's quality isn't really his quickness. He's not like Darrelle Revis was years ago. He's closer to Richard Sherman, where he's big, he's strong, he's got long arms, he wants to get his hands on you, and he wants to control you. He went against DK Metcalf last week. Metcalf scored 2 touchdowns, but neither of them were really on Ramsey. Metcalf overall was frustrated on the day, and it was largely because of what Ramsey did to him. And that's a perfect matchup for him, because Metcalf is huge and Metcalf wants to out-physical you, whereas Adams is a little bit more subtle and wants to confuse you and go one way and show you the other way and go and make quick turns and get into tight spaces and then explode out of them into wide open space. So I think while Adams, I think, will win that matchup, I think the presence of Ramsey might force the offense to go elsewhere, and you might see a bigger game from Aaron Jones or from Robert Tonyan, who's at a breakout year tight end. The other receivers there aren't really reliable, but you don't know what you're going to get from them week to week. The other key there is Aaron Donald went out of last week's game, so if he's not fully healthy, the Rams probably have no shot.
All right, good stuff, Cian. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Cian Fahey giving us some thoughts ahead of the NFL weekend this weekend. It's just gone 9 o'clock, 2 minutes past this Thursday morning on OTB AM. We've got TV coming up with Sue Murphy. Right after the break, though, we're going to speak with Steve Scott about bringing Tiger Woods to a playoff in the 1996 US Amateur Championships.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. For the first time ever, bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest game of the week right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
Off the ball.
I just love playing any sort of ball, team sport. And as you mentioned, like traveling around the world, like it was insane. Like Sydney, New Zealand, San Francisco, Russia, South Africa, America, Canada. Been to some amazing places, and all while playing sport. Like, again, growing up as a girl, I never even thought this was a dream.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Okay, so as you probably know, there's a brand new Tiger Woods documentary being aired in the United States at the moment. Part 1 came out last weekend, and basically it deals with Tiger's upbringing and his early years in professional golf. But one of the major points on this journey is the 1996 US Amateur Championship. It's shown in glorious Technicolor in the documentary. It's his last event before turning pro, and someone who had a front row seat to all of this incredible finale to this amateur championship in 1996 was Steve Scott. Now, he's the man who Tiger Woods had to beat to win that title 25 years ago, and I'm delighted to say he joins us on the show today. Steve, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for taking the call.
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's my first time in Ireland, I think.
Well, you're very welcome virtually. On Instagram the other day, you said you were interviewed for this documentary in 2019, but the stuff that you were saying was eventually left on the cutting room floor. So give us the exclusive here. What's all the good stuff that we missed out on in the documentary that you revealed?
Oh, well, I guess, what we had to say wasn't quite salacious enough, so they they left it out, which is fine. It's all good. They definitely went, they uncovered kind of they didn't really talk to any of his competitors that they played against other than Rocco Mediate, I guess. Or at least got on the cover on the final cut. I think they talked to Chris DeMarco, and there might have been a couple others in there, maybe Bob May even. But yeah, I think they maybe they had an idea at the beginning, and once they started getting all the information from all of their interviewees, they decided to go in another direction with it. So so be it. But yeah, no, we just talked a lot about the match and different points of the match and how impactful that day was to the history of golf, and how Tiger Woods really became Tiger Woods and turned pro the next day, and me being the last amateur player he ever played against. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to go through that, and fun, but being a part of history is pretty cool.
It certainly is, I'd imagine. Let's go back to Pumpkin Ridge then. In 96, you mentioned there that Tiger's going for 3 in a row, a historic achievement, which is probably never going to be surpassed. You just finished your freshman season, I think, at Florida, going up against him. So it's not like you're unaware of how amazing Tiger Woods is going to be. I presume you're acutely aware, in fact, that this guy is going to become one of the greatest sports people of all time, even at this point.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he had won 3 U.S. juniors and 2 consecutive U.S. amateurs. So he really had the momentum on his side in a lot of ways. I mean, it was the David versus Goliath sort of matchup. And yeah, I still can't believe, looking back this is the 25th anniversary this year. I cannot believe that I was the other guy in that match. I mean, it really blows my mind. But what he has done in golf, I mean, he was supposed to do, he was brought up from, a toddler age, or maybe even younger than that, really, to be this golf killing machine. And for him to have all the chips stacked against him, and me being 5 up after 18, and him knowing that he was probably going to turn professional the next day and sign a big Nike contract, and it's pretty amazing that all of those things had to be somewhere in his mind, but yet he was able to put that aside and compartmentalize it and go out and play an unbelievable 18. The second 18, he shoots 65. I mean, I'm 5 up after 18. I shoot 70, 2 under par, and I don't win. And that doesn't happen too often.
It's incredible when you put it that way, that to have a 5-stroke lead against a guy who's already a 2-time US amateur. You've got Phil Knight, I think, in the crowd. You've got, I presume, one of the most energetic galleries that the US Amateur Championship is ever going to see. And you're there midway through the finals, 5 shots ahead. What are you thinking at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even 5 shots. It was 5 entire holes. So each hole is its own tournament, essentially. So, I mean, you could lose in stroke play, you could lose 3 shots on one hole, but in match play, you can only lose 1 hole at a time. So, a 5-up lead is pretty monumental. I mean, if I just maintained that 5-up lead going into the back 9, there wouldn't have been a whole lot of holes left. But he played a great front 9 coming out in the afternoon, and yeah, he did Tiger Woods things, right? I mean, he came out and that was really just the coronation of his amateur career, and then for him to go and win 2 tour events that fall, and then the Masters 8 months later, and breaking all the records, winning by 12. It's really, I mean, remarkable isn't even the word to describe what he has done in his career. And he's accomplished things that nobody in the history of golf will probably ever accomplish ever again.
did he have an edge on the course that weekend? Was there an element about him where you were made blatantly clear to you that you were his enemy for those 36 to 38 holes, as it turned out?
Yeah, I think we both had an edge. You know, we both were. I mean, first of all, it's a pressure-packed match. I mean, he's playing for history. I'm playing for the U.S. Amateur title, the biggest title you could ever win as an amateur. And yeah, I mean, we didn't talk a whole lot. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of chit chat. But when you're under that much pressure, it's really hard to stir up a conversation because you're so laser focused on what you're trying to do. And you know, just the whole scene that day was really pretty surreal. But yeah, he wasn't too much of a chit chatter. You know, I would say good shot, he would say thanks, and that was really the extent of our conversation. I mean, it really was.
So you didn't get any good shots off Tiger, no?
No, he didn't. He didn't want to. He wasn't good at acknowledging his opponents, I don't think.
Well, the thankful thing for him is that you were pretty good at acknowledging your opponent. You were pretty good at noticing things that your opponent did. For people that aren't familiar with this particular part of the story, tell us about the marker and how you actually played a part in, I guess, Tiger not getting caught by the rules eventually.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's no question. I mean, the 34th hole of the whoops, my bad. 34th hole of the match. There we go. Yeah, so you're making me flustered already thinking about this. The 34th hole of the match, I'm 2 up with 3 to play, and you know I've got a lot of momentum, and you know I've kind of just held them off on the back 9 and made a couple really good shots and won a few holes, and so I'm 2 up with 3 to play, and he drives it. We both hit driver on the 16th, 34th hole of the match, and he's down there about 50 yards past me. I drive it into like an old divot, and the ball is kind of sitting down, and it's not a great lie, and it's a right pin. I only hit draws. My ball only curved right to left. I was not good at hitting a fade. Still am not good at hitting a fade. And so I kind of come from the inside a little bit, and I chunk it. I hit it in the green side bunker. He hits the sand wedge about 6 feet, spins it back off the hill, and actually spins out of the rough, crazily enough. Spins it about 6 feet. And so I hit my bunker shot up there to 10 feet. And this is kind of where fate puts itself in the world, right? I mean, everything happens for a reason. Everything, like, it's really funny how it all works out. And I mentioned this actually, this is a big topic of the book that I've got coming out soon that I can mention to you, called Hey Tiger, did you move, you need to move your marker back. But so his ball is right in my line. And so I asked him to move his marker 1 to the right. And I get up there, it's about a left edge putt, and I get up there and I bury it. I hit a great putt, goes right in the hole. And I'm walking off to the side, and I'm out of the corner of my eye. I'm really happy that I made this putt. Like, it was a huge moment, because if I don't, I essentially give him the hole. He has to just 2-putt from 6 feet, and he's going to do that. But I forced him to make this putt to win the hole outright. And I'm going off to the side of the green, and I kind of look out of the corner of my eye like, hey, he's kind of down in his crouch, you know, putting his ball marker, it's on the ground. And I say, hey, you need to move that back. And he kind of maybe does a double take or something. But he has to stand up and go through the whole routine of moving the marker back, because he had completely forgotten to do so. And in match play, if you play from the wrong spot, unfortunately you lose the hole, and that would have been the whole entire match right there. And you know, look, it's the moment is not. I'm telling you know, and I know you teed up the story for me, but the moment is more. It's not like, oh well, Steve Scott did this great thing. It's really golf. Golf is, you know, for those of you who you know play golf and love golf, you know that this is really the essence of the game: sportsmanship, integrity, those sorts of things are very, very important to golfers. And in that moment, essentially, you know, I supported and upheld the game of golf in that moment. And I'm very proud of that moment. You know, unfortunately, the match ultimately didn't turn out my way from there. He made some great putts and some great shots. But that moment is something that will live with me forever, and it will live in the history of the game forever.
Tiger says that he changed how he uses his markers ever since then.
Yes, absolutely.
He goes tails, I think, whenever he knows he needs to move his ball back, and heads when he knows that the ball can stay where it is. Like it's an amazing day for you personally. It's obviously, like, I guess Tiger has to go to 2 holes of a playoff to actually put you away. You're playing unbelievable golf over the course of this day, but it's also deeply personal for you as well, because you have your girlfriend as your caddy, who's now your wife.
Yeah.
Does that kind of help the fondness of the memory? Like, do you often reminisce about it together? Because it's very unusual for, I guess, a couple to have this incredible sporting moment to look back on.
There's no question. I mean, you think about the history of golf and how many female caddies there were in big moments in golf. And obviously you had Fanny Sunison, who caddied for Nick Faldo. You had Nikki Stricker, who caddied for her husband, Steve. Not too many other female caddies out there, especially one that played such a pivotal of a role. I wouldn't highly recommend marrying your caddy. It doesn't really, some of them don't bathe very well, but no, I'm kidding. But the fact that, yes, we absolutely, Christy and I have been married now for 21 years, and we have 2 great kids, a 12-year-old boy, JC, and a 10-year-old daughter, Kaylee. And it's a really special thing to look back and know that we were a part of history, and we did the right thing in the right moment. And it's something, even though I lost, I still won. And I think that's the best lesson that anybody can learn from this.
Have you heard the Butch Harmon story? The lines he gave to Tiger Woods in terms of the motivational tool in between the 2 rounds of 18. Is this true?
Just a couple times, yeah, I've heard it. I read it once in Golf Digest, or I read it somewhere, and I wrote him a letter. It was a motivational story. It wasn't a true story, but it was a story to get Tiger fired up. And he said, after the morning 18, hey, every time you miss a putt, you notice that that little girl is laughing or, giggling over there in the corner with Steve. And, I guess, whatever, to try to fire Tiger up. And yeah, he comes off the 35th hole when he holds this 35-footer. And he goes, well, I guess she ain't smiling now. And, it was all a motivational story, not true. My wife is a LPGA professional. She would never do that sort of thing. She knows the game of golf well enough to never do that, first of all. But yeah, I've heard that story, and it was funny. Butch told that story. I don't live there anymore, but I was a pro up in New York, and he came to one of our big teaching seminars and did a big seminar and talked for a couple hours. And part of his talk was just that. He didn't know I was in the audience at all. And there was about 400 of my colleagues from the Met section in New York, and he didn't know I was in the audience at all. And everybody starts looking at me and kind of going, ooh. And eventually he kind of apologized afterwards, because he didn't know that I was there. But whatever, Butch is Butch, and that's the way. But it was an unbelievable moment, the whole thing. And to be a part of it, pretty crazy.
And that is kind of to bring us to our final point here then. Do you ever consider the sliding doors moment had, not so much the marker story, let's forget about that, but maybe had Tiger maybe not sunk that incredible monster put on, was it 16, the first really iconic uppercut moment when he's wearing red? If that lips in and out, or if you think that it's one stroke here or there that goes in your favour, do you consider how things might have gone differently, or do you think it doesn't really matter? Tiger was always going to become a superstar regardless, and it might not have had too much of an impact on your career.
Well, I think it would have been a positive for me, for sure, to win. I mean, I basically got everything out of that match other than the trophy. I mean, I played in the Masters. I played in the Masters. Every kid's dream. I wanted to play in the Masters. I got to play in the Masters. I played in the U.S. Open. I played, numerous tour events because of that moment. I'm getting into a broadcasting career in the last few years as well. And, that happened because of that moment. Everything really has happened great in my life because of that moment. Married my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And just everything really has revolved around that moment. And, really going into that, this whole last year with the pandemic, it's given me the opportunity to really kind of think a lot deeper about that moment. And I wrote a book. It's called Hey Tiger, You Need to Move Your Mark Back. It's coming out in mid-May. and it'll be available on, anywhere you buy books. And I'm going around the country and maybe around the world to do some book talks. Maybe you'll have me over there in Ireland
100%
to do some book talks. But yeah, everybody, it's a story that junior golfers need to know. It's a story that, a big member guest at a club, or, it's a story that golfers need to know. And it's a story to pass on for generations, and understanding how great the game is. In a world where we live in other sports, maybe trying to get away with things as much as they can. Whether it's the Patrick Reed incident and in the Bahamas building sandcastles in the sand, or the Houston Astros Major League Baseball team over here cheating with the pitching signs. People try to get away with as much as they can until they get caught. And I think that moment really it's that feel-good moment, that feel-good story where, look, I didn't win, I didn't capture the trophy that day, but I captured a lot. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what matters to me. And I've not lost any sleep over that moment at all. I wish things would have turned out different, but I know I'm going to go to the grave knowing that I did the right thing in the most pressure-packed moment, and I did the right thing, and it's something that my kids will learn from, and my kids will do, and their kids will do, and it's a moment that I'm very, very proud of.
And I'm sure we'd love to get stuck into that a little bit more when the book does come out. In mid-May, you said, I'm sure people will keep an eye on that. Hopefully we'll get you back on for that, to have a bit of a deeper chat around sportsmanship, especially Patrick Reed and a couple of other individuals that possibly come to mind even within the game of golf. I think it'll be an interesting chat. Just one final question. What are your thoughts on the documentary so far? Like, it's interesting at the very start there that you kind of allude to how the documentary makers have gone in a different way to maybe the golf itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the documentary is definitely juicy. It's I've seen both parts of it. I won't give away the second part, but it gets pretty juicy. I'll say that. It's really interesting. Most all stories out there on Tiger have revolved around the greatness of his 82 wins on the PGA Tour, his 15 majors, his all the great things he's done on the golf course. But let's face it, there is another side to Tiger Woods. There's some people that want to see that, and there's other people who are appalled that this story is being told about their hero, because he's a hero to many people. But I guess you can't, especially in this day and age, you can't get away with these sorts of things without them being videotaped or have audio. If this happens 50 years ago, there's no tape, or there's probably not as many records of something like this. But he's in an era where he's in a total fishbowl, and he can't do all the things that he did, and maybe he was a little naive to think that he could get away with all the things that he got away with. So that story is just being told.
For sure. I can't wait to see part two. Part one was really, really good. You've been listening to Steve Scott, a phenomenal speaker, a phenomenal book hopefully coming down the line as well. Great catching up with you, Steve, and chat to you again soon.
No, it was great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really interesting stuff there about the Tiger Woods documentary. And we wait with bated breath to see exactly when the rest of us are going to get the opportunity to see it. Not on the screener list. Maybe, Owen, you can hook us up with whoever it is at HBO. They're 23 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. If you want to get involved, 0879 180 180 is the number to get in touch with us. We're going to be back in just a moment with... Sue is with us now. Sue, good morning to you.
Morning. How are you guys?
Very well. Sue Murphy is here with us for a new weekly slot about what to watch on telly. What are we watching, Sue?
Anything that's going, but the main thing is I came across Back to Life on Netflix. Do you know the way the suggestions come up in Netflix and you're like, oh God, no. And they kind of bombard you when you go in. There's just too much information. But Back to Life was one of the ones that came up for me, and it's like the trailer just totally pulled me in straight away. And I was like, no, I'll definitely give this a go. And it kind of reminded me of Fleabag in some ways. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet, because if you haven't, it's phenomenal. You should definitely watch it. But it's kind of that kind of humour, comic grief, kind of very just dark in places, but really endearing in loads of other places. Like, it just hits you in the stomach with emotions sometimes that you're not expecting. Basically, it revolves around this girl called Mary who returns to her life after 18 years in prison. You're not quite sure what she did to end up in prison. But when she comes back, most of the town, the coastal town where she lives, hates her. Like there's bricks thrown in the windows of places she works. There's graffiti on the outside of her parents' home that they're constantly trying to scrub away. And she's just like, her whole life is gone and she's just basically trying to just move on and nobody's letting her. And it's really funny in places and just really, really sad in places. And I've gotten through about 3 episodes. Like I watched it to review it for News Talk and I just couldn't stop watching it. It's really, really, really good.
Okay, so it's called Back to Life.
Back to Life.
And it's one season? Is it?
It's one season, yeah. And it was a BBC show. It was 2019. I remember when this first came out, it kind of, like, I saw the press release for it, didn't really watch it. And then just because it was on Netflix, I picked it up. But there doesn't seem to be a second series on the way or anything like that, which is really disappointing. I don't know what happens in the last episode. Maybe it is a self-contained thing because I haven't got to the last episode yet. But
sometimes when there's no second season, that's the best thing for everybody. So you know you're watching this and it's a one-time commitment and you're not going to have to come back to it. And you don't, I actually kind of sometimes prefer that.
Yeah, like it's like the Queen's Gambit. So much better as one contained series. Didn't need to be any more,
They've got a number 2 on IMDb, just saying. They've opened up a tab for season 2 on IMDb. Is this a sign? Is this a sign that we're not going to get a terrible, terrible ending to season 1?
I hope so. I don't want to give anything away, but I got to the end of the second episode and it wasn't what I thought it was, if that makes sense. So like there is a kind of a reveal halfway through it, and I don't want to actually give that away. But it's just things that are buried in Netflix that are absolute gems that people are only starting to come across now. And like, if you give it the time, it's actually totally worth it. Like the other one, actually, me and Eoin were talking about this yesterday, is Schitt's Creek. And this like, okay, it's not a buried gem anymore. But I remember when I first started watching this, I was on maternity leave and it was just 20-minute episodes. So it was fine for me to watch because I didn't have that much time and I had a child hanging out of me all the time. But it was just what I needed. And like, I don't know about you guys, but when you watch the news at night and it's just all so grim at the moment and you just want, like, I just need 20 minutes of something, it's perfect escapist TV. And have you guys seen it yet?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how many seasons through. What has just happened? They've got the store, and they've had the store they've had the store for a while. Yeah. They've had the kids stealing in the store, and
Lexus.
Yeah.
But this is my second time watching it, and I never watch anything a second time around. And I just was like, I need to go back to Schitt's Creek and just start watching it again. So this is my second time watching it in a year. Like, it's that good.
That's a remarkably close amount of time between a rewatch, Sue. Like, do you not feel that like your television watching time could be spent on better things, like actually broadening your horizons than doubling down on Schitt's Creek?
No, not at the moment. Like, I just kind of feel like whenever I walk into my sitting room, Gary Neville's on the TV, and like everyone just needs a break from Gary Neville every now and again. Like, it's just at the moment, I think escapist TV. Like the other one that I watched over Christmas was Bridgerton. And it was just one of those ones that, like, any time I had 20 minutes, I was just watching Bridgerton.
No thanks.
And I think no.
No thanks.
Really?
No thanks. No thanks to people dressing up as rich English people from 200 years ago. No thanks.
But it's surprisingly good.
Spare me.
Oh, we've found the next darts here. So what? So all period dramas, period comedies, whatever it is. It's not for you.
No, not all. But just that refined English manners, rich people. Nah, not having it. Not having it, pal. No thanks.
Yeah, but did you watch Downton?
Definitely did not watch Downton. Won't be watching Downton. Like, probably not going to watch The Queen or whatever it's called either. Like, I mean, I realise that it's kind of a bit more up to date. Might skip the early parts, but like, no. I just
The Crown.
The Crown, whatever. Yeah, no
you
interest.
Watched The Crown?
No, and like, but why? I mean, why should I be that interested in the royal family of England? Like, what a shit show that is. No thanks.
That's just such a one-dimensional way of looking at television in general.
There's so much better stuff out there. There's so much better stuff.
The Crown serves a great purpose in telling us things about society. not about the royal family. You know, of course, it tells us lovely, salacious details about the royal family, and it's hammed up, and it's all great. Especially if you don't really like the royal family, it's brilliant. But it also tells us things about different elements of society. You're looking at this in.
I have a more open mind about the Crown than I do about Downton or any of that stuff. I mean, I would much rather read the original. Like, I'm happy to read some Jane Austen. That's top quality stuff. But like, even the TV representations of all that stuff is like, no.
You're beginning to sound like a bit of a snob, Ger.
It's the opposite.
No, I'll take my Jane Austen and the real historical accounts, but I won't watch any entertainment TV.
Well, I think there's plenty of entertaining TV. I just think that, like, not choosing to escape into the imperial wealth of the British Empire is something that I'm choosing to do. I'm okay. I've had enough of the British Empire in my life. Thanks very much.
But it's like Owen was saying, it's a lot more than that. And I think with The Crown as well, it's just it's a masterclass in TV making. It's beautifully shot. The casting is superb.
Everything is beautifully shot these days, though, too. Like that in the 80s, that was like, okay, grand, because there was loads of crap that we had to sift through. A lot of it at that stage would have been like made by the BBC, and even then, that was like the best stuff in the world. But most stuff you see nowadays is actually very well shot. I expect my TV, given how much money is going into it, and how many different subscriptions you have, to be reasonably well made and proficient. Like to have a basic standard.
That's not look, think about it this way, right? I love the way this became an argument about the Crown. Like, I know people that are absolutely, kind of like you, would hate the idea of being a royalist or a monarchy and will watch The Crown because it is so intriguing and brilliant.
I said I've had a relatively open mind about The Crown, but I'm not doing Downton, and I'm not Bridgerton.
You just said a minute ago you'd never watch it.
Yeah, so I had sort of an open mind about watching it. Like, I might be convinced at some point into watching it, but like, I'm not in any rush.
Okay, well, this is the slot. It's just you watching The Crown for the next few weeks and us talking about it.
100%. We need a running commentary from start to finish of you binging The Crown. That is what this slot is going to become, whether you like it or not.
Well, I might just have to phone in sick every Thursday morning at 9:20. What are you watching, Owen?
So me and Sue had this conversation yesterday, and we came to the conclusion that actually being somebody who watches a lot of Premier League is way harder than being a parent. So Sue obviously is doing a bit of both, and she definitely agreed that watching Burnley all the time or watching Aston Villa all the time is way more of a burden on your time. So doing a lot of that at the moment. Like, I could tell you exactly how Ashley Westwood takes his corners for Burnley. Couldn't tell you a lot about any new television shows. I started The Sopranos 2 months ago, and I'm still at it. That is how bad my binging has been. I'm tic-tacking it a little bit with Curb Your Enthusiasm. So doing the Now TV double at the moment. Sopranos season 5 midway through it. First watch. I think it was my fourth attempt to actually start it. I've actually kept my end of the bargain up this time, and I've gone all the way. And
why did you drop out in the past, and what changed this time? Maturity, fair enough. Okay, I get it. You're a bit older and a bit wiser. It's fair enough, Owen. It happens to all of us.
The bad language put me off in the past. Yeah, that was it. The violence. God, I was offended and horrified by everything that I saw. So I was like, maybe I'll wait till I'm 26 and a half to actually watch this thing. And that's what I did. And
what was different this time?
Lockdown, actually having time to spend with it and being like, I'm really looking forward to putting aside 52 minutes of my time to actually watch this, and maybe I'll do another 52 minutes right afterwards, because I do think the glory in this show is the depth that it goes to in terms of every single character and the little ticks that you start to notice from all the different characters that are presented towards you, rather than going in and out of it once every week, for example, and being like, what was happening in the last episode? Who's this guy? What's his name? I think actually gorging on it, even though it's taken me 2 months to get this far, I think gorging on it is the best way to consume this show, because I didn't quite realize that it is such a character-led show rather than a narrative-led show until I actually fully watched it and realized that's what it's all about. I'm almost finished season 5. It's basically 2 seasons left, because season 6 is basically a double season as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. But it just gets better and better and better. Even though it's not objectively getting better, you're just falling more in love with everything that's happening in this universe.
It's funny. I actually have had that very thought, whether or not the later seasons are actually better than the early seasons, but it's not the case. When you go back and listen to, so I'm listening to that the podcast series at the moment that 2 of the actors are doing, and you can't listen to it yet on because they give away so much. But when you're finished, you can go back. And like, they're talking about the later seasons, and you're like, wow, they really reached a peak of storytelling and depth and character. But actually, some of the stuff that happens in season 2 is some of the best TV that's ever been made. That whole Big Pussy storyline is unbelievable. like, and how that's all slowly unfolding, and the nightmares that brings literally and metaphorically to Tony and to the crew. That's sensational TV. And I actually wouldn't speed up if I was you. I would slow that out, like, you know, the last few meals of a person in the desert desperately waiting to get to the oasis, because you'll never watch this again for the first time.
Yeah, can I say one thing? I have to tell you my Sopranos story. I am obsessed with The Sopranos, and I was watching it as it was on TV years ago, and I've never seen the last episode because I recorded it, and the next day I was listening to the radio, and a broadcaster gave away the end, the very last scene of the very last episode, and I was like, well, not going to watch that now. And I was so annoyed. I've never gone back and watched the last episode.
Well, that's a bit silly too.
Name and shame. Who was the broadcaster?
Imagine Ray Foley. He was talking about it the next day, and then he just went, well, I'm going to tell everyone what happens, and then told everyone what happened. And I blame actually JP Gilborn because he was involved.
Did they actually tell you the truth about what happened? Because I was on air that morning and made up an ending and got a lot of trouble for making up the ending, which was as ridiculous and made up ending as I could possibly do, because I hadn't been watching it. And I took a lot of... and I was like, duh, if you'd actually been watching it, which you clearly have, because you're giving out about it, it couldn't possibly have been the ending.
Well, like, I think that the problem was you spend, and like you were saying, you spend so much time with these characters and you really get to know them. And then with the last episode, I was like, couldn't bring myself to watch. I've never sat down and watched the last episode since. And I know what happens, obviously, but I can't do it. I'm going to have to go back to the start and start again. And
but isn't there like a major death scene early on in the final episode?
I don't know.
I think there might be. Like, I think there might be a massive plot twist or important point, and like, it's not just the end. It's not just the last scene. You've got to watch that last episode. And sorry, you've never watched that back?
No.
The whole thing?
I've never watched back The Sopranos since, no.
Right, well, that's... I've watched The Sopranos 3 times, and I would much rather watch The Sopranos again than go and watch Downton or Bridgerton or any of that.
Yeah, but like, that's the kind of stuff that you need to just turn your brain off. Like The Sopranos, like, there's a different tier of TV where you're like, I have to commit to this and it deserves my time. Whereas Bridgerton, you could probably pick up your phone in the middle of it and then go back to it. It's fine. You're not going to miss a plot point.
What's the point of that?
But sure, it's escapist TV.
No, that's what Schitt's Creek is for.
No, you're not just watching TV just to like be really serious TV. You need to have something that you
The Sopranos is hilarious. The Sopranos is absolutely hilarious.
But but they're really serious storylines. Like, I remember the first time I watched The Sopranos, I remember watching him going into to meet a psychiatrist, and I was like, this is unbelievable. This is a mafia boss going in to see it. And that it demands your attention from the outset. Whereas like those kind of fluffy things that are really nice to watch over Christmas don't demand the same attention. Different tier of TV.
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is sensational. It's on Amazon. There's 3 seasons of it. We watched it over Christmas, and it's like really good. The Morning Show on Apple. Parts of it are awful. Parts of it are absolutely awful, and then parts of it are like stunning. So it has you've got to kind of swallow a little bit of cheese to get the good stuff. But there's one scene where Jennifer Aniston is talking to her daughter, and it's like, wow, this is pretty good. This is good stuff. A lot of parents are like, yeah. But that's 10 episodes, and I think they are making a second series, but you don't want a second series, something like that. It's like, fine, you've done this, it's great, off you go. That Hugh Grant, Nicole Kidman thing, when you're watching Nicole Kidman these days, what does she feel? Is she happy? Is she sad? Is she smiling? Is she laughing? Is she distressed? I can't tell.
That's terrible.
I can't tell.
I didn't like the end of that. I really didn't
like
the
last episode. The end was fine.
Episode.
Your man gets arrested. Who cares? Like,
there's the end of it.
The end's
For
kind
anyone
of,
that hasn't seen it.
The end's kind of irrelevant. Like, it's the journey. I mean, you know, but they invested too much in that, and it didn't make any sense. It really didn't make any sense. I thought it was like...
Yeah, well, I thought Nicole Kidman was brilliant in it, because I usually don't like Nicole Kidman.
What was she doing? Who was she?
She's always the same character.
Well,
she's always got the same accent, the same hair, the same... everything is the same about Nicole Kidman and everything.
Unfortunately, I can't tell what she is emoting at any point.
Poor Nicole Kidman.
The mask never slips.
We should recap what the suggestions have been this morning. So we've got Back to Life, we've got Schitt's Creek, we've got The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and we've got The Morning Show. I think they're 4 rock solid suggestions. I should mention before, people are saying 2021 is going to be a bad year. I don't know how anybody can say that when the US office is back on Netflix. Every single episode, watch it, rewatch it, watch it for a third time, watch it for a fourth time. That is the only thing you should be doing this year. It will make your life 10 times happier.
There's nothing really coming up for 2021 that's a problem. Like the one series that I saw coming up on ITV was Finding Alice, and they took 2 years to film it because of COVID. Like, it's going to be a bad year for new TV.
Yeah,
really
it's going to be about 18 months or so. But some stuff is back filming. Blue Bloods is obviously back filming, and I'm not a fan. I've never watched it. But if they're able to do that, they should be able to do some other stuff too. So I don't think it's going to be as big a disaster as people are saying. Wolfwalkers, if you haven't seen it, is absolutely sensational. It's perfect for kids and grown-ups alike. That's also on Apple TV at the moment. It's 9:40 this morning. And there is breaking news. Dublin footballer Paddy Andrews has announced his retirement from the game. One of those players who really made an impact over a couple of seasons when he was starting, and then who was obviously also one of those Dublin footballers who, when you talk to the other ones, it's like he's setting standards in training, he's absolutely lighting up first choice defenders. And so I'm sure we'll get to hear from Paddy over the course of the week. But I think there's probably going to be a few more Dublin retirements this week as well. OTB AM live every morning, 7:30 in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Brian O'Driscoll will pick his Irish 15 for the Six Nations tonight on OTB with Nathan. Here's Ron O'Gara.
Wednesday night rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now, welcome back. So as Richie mentioned in the news round, news confirmed by Six Nations organisers today, the general map for the next couple of months. The Men's Six Nations 2021 remains on schedule. It gets underway at the weekend of February 6th. Women's Six Nations postponed until early spring, summer. We're talking April, May territory. Only England are fully professional, France semi-professional, so that complicated bubbles and testing, so it was not possible, they felt. And World Cup qualification is still very much up in the air, so it's messy indeed on the women's front, and then the men's under-20 postponed as well. And as we know, Heineken Champions Cup rounds 3 and 4 have been postponed, so that is the theme of the news over the last while. Roland O'Gara is with us. Evening.
Hi Joe, how are you?
Yeah, very well. I hope you're well too. I know La Rochelle for much of 2020 had done very, very well from speaking to you when it came to COVID cases, and then suddenly last few days, bit of a tornado sweeps through.
Yeah, it's we're all in isolation, I suppose, back in our houses. The training centre shut down, and we had initially 3 cases, which we thought was hopefully going to be the end of it, and then retested again, and now we had another 5 pros on top of that with 12 academy players with a member of staff. So the French regulations kicked in and just entered the not allowed under any circumstances to go to the training centre, not even to pick up your runners or anything like that for the players' point of view. So no hanging around with each other, completely trying to, I suppose, break all the connections among players and trying to get us back safely and healthy as quickly as possible. So testing again in the morning, and we go from there.
And so far, so good for you? You're okay so far?
Yeah, I am. Exactly. So I think I've been 26 times tested, I think. So the nostrils suffer a little bit, but
sure.
It's you prefer it like that because it's very important. Because there's some nasty stories circulating as well in terms of people young and fit who have been put on ventilators. So I think this myth of that if you're fit and healthy in your sport, you'll be fine. I don't think it necessarily. I don't think that's the correct way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's amazing, I suspect, for households all over the country how quickly this virus goes from being, well, you've got a really good chance of being okay, to very, very scary when the reality of it lands in your vicinity.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking to a few people back home, and it's touch and go for 1 or 2 people who are in their 20s, and very, very serious and very, very sad. So it's I think for people, if they haven't realised at this stage, it's of utmost importance that you do the best you can to avoid getting it.
And Ronan, in so much as it's possible for anyone to know how it got in there, is the general sense that it got in there via one player and that player gave it to everyone, or could it be multiple sources bringing it into the place, or is it possible to even know?
I think there is an awful lot of research going on, and we have a young doctor who's very, I suppose, forward-thinking, and he's looking at a load of different studies, but we've nothing conclusive because, you know, I think if in the Bundesliga you can see, I think a few studies were produced, and some teams there really struggled to regain form when their group got it. So naturally, you're trying to do your best to try and get the people who have tested COVID positive to get them back feeling good about themselves initially. But then, obviously, from a sporting point of view, we don't know how they're going to react to it. So, no, at this stage, I was asking them, you know, how is it these players? But it seems to be very, very random in terms of how it attacks. So that's the danger of this virus.
Right. When will La Rochelle get back in the pitch then? How does it work?
It works with, I suppose, tomorrow. So go for testing. It's good. We kind of have a drive-through testing setup organised in the empty stadium where you literally, you know, I mean, park a car, walk in, don't connect or greet, or no physical kind of, which rugby players like doing in terms of, I suppose, greeting people in the morning, but that's not allowed. And you go in, you got tested, you straight back in your car, you go home, and you spend your day at home, and you meet as the least amount of people possible. And then by hopefully 10 p.m. that night, we'll have our results. And that obviously implies either plan A, plan B, or plan C, depending on where we are with the results.
So if everyone was negative, would you be back on the pitch weekend coming?
You could be back in on Friday, yes, obviously, but that's if you're negative. There's obviously different protocol for which, depending on what stage you tested positive. So these guys will have a kind of essentially a return to play COVID plan, and that differs depending on when you were struck down with the positive test. So it's very, very strict and very well regulated in the top 14, and very few grey areas, and a lot of paperwork and a lot of work from the medical department.
And of the top 14 generally, are other teams having similar outbreaks at the moment?
Yeah, they are. Well, it seems to be that you obviously saw the Stade Francais at the start of the season. Bayonne got wiped out, Stade Francais got wiped out. We're not at that stage, but it has hit an awful lot of teams, at different stages, but none consecutively, or sorry, at the same time. So in that regard, it's great that the competition is going down, and that probably leads into the point about, I suppose, why the French teams were very anxious about playing Europe, because obviously they could see there was a different strain in the UK, and that Ireland, the cases were were record high for the world. So they're very proud of their domestic competition. So their fear was if we go to play in England or in Ireland and we bring a strain of that virus back, it will do huge damage to the potential of playing in a top 14 for which isn't under threat in any way for the rest of the season. So I think that was a very smart move by the I suppose the top 14 clubs, or by the LNR.
Yeah, I do get the sense that a lot of the French clubs would be probably happy enough to let this season's Champions Cup just drift out to sea.
No, I dispute that heavily with you. In the fact that, with the way, as I keep harping on in this show, if there's relegation, Joe, it's a different mindset, and if you're involved in that scrap, you got to get concentrated on that. But if you have a chance of progressing in the European Cup, the French teams love it, absolutely, and especially in the format this year. It was 4 games to get to a quarter-final. So, you mean the squad depth and the squad quality, there's a lot of teams in France who would consider themselves challengers, so there's absolutely no way they would like to forfeit their opportunity when, I suppose, the history is obviously loaded towards the bouclier, but to achieve that, it's over 30 games, while you look at the opportunity with silverware with about 8 games in Europe. All the competitors playing in the top 14 would love a crack off that.
Okay, that's good to hear. Sometimes you wonder if it's a lukewarm relationship at times.
No, I think for certain clubs that can't have the joy to double load their challenge, but even though Claremont were beaten by Munster at home, Claremont, I would say, will have a right crack off that game in Thomond Park because they've huge history in the competition and they like the competition. Racing are obviously contenders and Toulouse are contenders. We were in the mix, and you can be sure that we'd be looking to put out our best possible group of players to represent our club to give us a good shot at progressing.
Good. Well, look, hopefully things improve. I was just checking, I was watching France 24 today, so it was kind of averaging over there 10,000 cases pre-Christmas a day, and now you're up to 18,000 cases. And I saw there's a cluster of the new variant in Marseille, and as we have found out, once it gets in, it's very hard to get rid of it. But hopefully things improve to matters.
Yeah, but it was at 60,000 on a daily basis for a number of weeks, Joe.
Yeah, I know. Well, I hope things stay that way. It's just our experience of this third wave. Maybe you seem to be a bit ahead of the curve in trying to stem it. But look, who knows? Once it gets in and gets out of control at the moment, it's pretty scary. Before the clock comes against us too much, this is probably an easy question, given the esteem in which you hold Paul O'Connell, but your thoughts on his appointment when you saw the news that he's come in as forwards coach and he's going to sort out the line-out and be part of the Irish setup?
Yeah, brilliant news. He's obviously a very close friend, and I suppose I know I don't have a lot of time because we could chat for hours about this. We may get a chance on the big screen to do it, Joe, over the coming months. But it is a great addition, and I think, I think to give the listeners a flavour of why it is would be so inaccurate to associate, the magical speeches that Paul made about that being his ace card. There are so many more layers underneath that he's a joy to talk rugby with. He has a massive understanding of the game. He has an awful lot of empathy. He isn't a hard man. He played as a hard man. He's very soft. He's very, emotionally attached to anything he gets involved in. He's obviously, I couldn't speak more highly of a guy I played essentially my whole career with. Hugely challenging. He yet absolutely loves rolling up the sleeves and getting involved in a project and getting the best outcome for his team.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make about the perception of O'Connell. It never has a, did you put the fear of God into them speech ever kind of pigeonholed a man so wrongly.
But I think, because I listened to it the other day as well, because it was all over social media, but it's so good, even maybe because I was in the changing room, but it's so good and it's so poorly. But that's a snapshot of him for 60 seconds, but there's another 15 years of that multiplied by, 15 games at least, and then there's all the preparation that goes into it. He is so meticulous in his preparation, but also his sense of humour is incredibly good as well. And I think it's a great I think opportunity for players in Ireland to be inspired by a former great. And you'll say, well, what coaching? I think he wouldn't have accepted, and I know from talking to him, the opportunity if he didn't think he could do it better than anyone else in the world, never mind in Ireland. So I think he have had detailed chats with Andy Farrell about what his role is, and I would be hugely confident in saying that he will absolutely perform his role with great detail, great enthusiasm, and better than anybody, I would think, that would be ever presented that opportunity.
You used the word enthusiasm there. I think there'll be a real shot of enthusiasm for players excited to work with O'Connell, either have played with him or grew up watching him. So straight away, would you think, I don't know how long he'll have with the players, as part of training camp in advance of the Six Nations. Say if we talked about two things which have cropped up in the last year, 18 months, the line-out and Ireland at the breakdown, you would imagine pretty quickly he can have an effect there, or will that take time?
Yeah, I would think pretty quickly as well. And to be honest, there are two areas I wouldn't have a great understanding of or a great appreciation of either, and the fact that you know, I wouldn't have the detail around the ruck that Paul would be interested in. I wouldn't obviously have the line-out detail that Paul would have, or even come close to it. But I understand there are a few basics required to even enter the room to converse with him. But I think what's different, I suppose, nowadays in the fact that they won't get that much time on the pitch, but how much learning is actually done on the pitch. The video is very, very powerful nowadays. And I think in terms of connecting with the players and bringing them through potential improvements, you can actually, a player can, your role from training, and that would equate so many times to be, the game analysis. So Paul will have cut many a clip, I would say, from training or from games of previous Irish games and saying, this is what the perfect picture looks like, or this is not what we value or what we rate ourselves around the ruck. So I think in that regard, there will be some fundamentals that he'll introduce. And from speaking to Mike Prendergast, who coached him in Stade Francais, he was saying he's a brilliant coach, and he makes his messages very simple and very clear, and that's a very, very important point with coaching.
Yes, I would think so. Tommy has texted in to say, can you ask Rog if he put the fear of God into any Englishmen that day?
Did Paul do or did I do?
Did you?
I don't.
We know Paul did. We're not so sure about you.
But we weren't even tired, was it? Was that? Oh, I'm going to go listen to it again afterwards.
Every morning. It should be your alarm clock.
You'd jump out of bed, wouldn't you?
We have zero time, and I know this is a week where you did get a chance to watch all of Leinster, Ulster and all of Connacht, Munster. Do you want to give me one O'Gara takeaway that jumped out at you from either game? You've got 1 point to make from the weekend, which I know isn't a fair ask.
I suppose the Connacht Munster game, it was just a credit to Connacht, I suppose, for staying in the fight. I thought Munster were by far the better team, but they never killed them, and it just shows if you don't kill off a team with a lot of fighting qualities, Connacht stay there, and then to give themselves the opportunity where they set themselves up for the killer blow and not to pull the trigger. They'd be desperately disappointed with that, but it was great to see the dog back in Munster. I thought their forward display was incredibly good and impressive, and they'll go into the Munster-Leinster game with an awful lot of optimism.
Yes, well, we might chat in a bit more detail around that game, but in the meantime, I hope the test results are all good when you get results in the next few days, Ronan, and we'll talk to you again. Cheers.
Pleasure, Joe. Thank you. See you.
Wednesday night rugby, OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Off the